Our MC Kaku is introduced as the strongest person who has solely defeated a legendary dragon, the Thunder Dragon, and returns to his village carrying it as a souvenir for his people. Being a civilized and well-mannered boy, he enters the village with proper rules of giving entrance fees, and later throws a banquet in a bar feasting on dragon meat, as the villagers have never seen high-quality meat before. Well, the bar owner Arno doesn't seem to believe Kaku that he is strong enough to defeat the legendary dragon, and even makes fun of his bluff, but his kawaii daughter Alma takes a stand for him because she knows that he would not lie to anyone, and his wife Joyce also seems to believe Kaku. The family feels ready to just give them their daughter as a suitable candidate to marry Kaku. Pedos, all of them. The day passes with the fun party, and night comes with everyone returning to their dens. Arnaud and his pregnant wife Juice start cleaning all the mess left in the bar. Suddenly, Juice feels her baby is running a rampage in her belly and is going to be born in around a month. It seems Kaku will embark on another journey, and he will take a round in the village next month, of course, to celebrate the newborn's birth. For today, he will stay a night there at the inn on Arnaud's invitation. He is tired as hell, but he is happy with whatever is going on because he never thought to live such an ordinary life. Kaku lost his life back in Japan, but the poor soul did not isekai to another magical world, instead reincarnated as a demon in legendary hell due to his sinful deeds. However, his life did not turn out well even being a demon. He was chased by horrible creatures and demons of high rank. Moreover, Satan, a supreme deity of hell, and Zeus, a supreme deity of heaven, were not on good terms, obviously, and always ignited a war that disturbed hell's environment. What would he have thought? There would be flower gardens and hot ladies in hell. Well, it continued for 2 years, and he somehow managed to obtain wisdom and power to survive in hell, but it did not help him for longer either. In a fierce battle between Zeus and Satan, he got tangled in a large blast that would seem he was dead for sure. However, he was safe and alive, and moved to another world different from Earth. Being a quick-witted person, he understood the situation and pretended to be an amnesiac. He roamed all around the world, and lastly he stumbled upon this village 3 years ago, where he learned the language and culture of this world, and is currently working as a traveling merchant. Now he deems himself a lucky and blessed person to live a dream life. Recalling these flashbacks and the realization of his condition in this world makes him laugh maniacally. His 2 years in hell have made him ultra strong in this world, and living such a luxurious life with comfortable food and shelter is his reward for withstanding hell. He is so overwhelmed in himself that he does not notice Alma standing beside him wondering what the heck this idiot is doing. He collects himself and asks her the reason for coming here. This poor soul has come to bring him water, but it is an excuse. She has shyly come to give him a pair of leather gloves. Her father taught her how to make them to help him avoid the burn from steering the horse's reins all day. Right at the moment, he puts on gloves that are comfortable and fit his hands perfectly, so he appreciates her for her hard work and will treasure it for his life. Alma laughs, declaring these gloves are for her future husband. She has basically confessed her love for him. The next moment, she embarrassingly leaves the room and greets him good night. Out there, she dances with joy that she has mustered her courage and confessed to him, whereas Kaku feels sorry for her. He is a demon with hard skin that does not burn due to rains. Moreover, he can't marry her either. Demons don't age and can't think of making a family. The next morning, Arnu takes Kaku out for fishing after breakfast, where they talk about things just as typically a girl's father and boyfriend talk about a girl's things. Kaku does not get what she finds interested in him enough to go after him, and learns maybe it is because he saved her life. She had a weak body since she was born, and it was expected she would not live more than 10 years, but now you see her chilling and dancing everywhere. When he returned from his first trip 1.5 years ago, she started eating spices and food he brought along. Arnold was also doubtful and confused about what he would do with Kaku when he came there for the first time, but now he is thankful to him. While fishing, Arnaud changes the topic and reveals he got a draft notice from Central and has decided to join the army. There has been a recent increase in demon activity, so if something happens to him, he wants Kaku to be the one to protect Alma and Ars. For some reason, he is sure his next baby will be a male, so he has named him Ars. Poor Arnaud does not know he is entrusting his family to a demon. Kaku collects his belongings and barges them into his carriage. He is setting on another trip and will come back by the end of next month to see Ars. Alma is tagging along with her crush. Kaku knows he cannot fulfill her wish, so he gives her a present as a token of thanks for gloves. It is a dragon-scale necklace that is very beautiful. After meeting everyone else, he embarks on his journey and goes to the different towns for his merchandise business, where his knowledge of years helps him become successful. He stumbles upon the royal capital Wyverna of Dragon Kingdom to visit the Merchant Guild. His successful merchandise has helped him get a rose insignia, and the document confirming his promotion to an intermediate level. Now he can communicate with nobles and make deals with them. After receiving this good news, he goes around the town to buy a shirt in black. The shopkeeper lady is nice to him and seems to know him for a while. She cannot believe he has become an intermediate level merchant when he had just started doing business. He wants to brag about it on returning to the village. It reminds her of information that the Holy Knights are on an expedition in the area around his village, so he should be careful. The holy knights of the church can receive updated information and signs of demons from their goddess, so they are allowed to go on expedition and wipe out demons. Well, this is an honorable job, but according to rumors, they take advantage of ordinary people, accuse them falsely, and pillage their village. This information puts him in an uneasy situation. He has a bad feeling about it, so he resorts to using his teleportation magic in a public area and moves to his village. He can see from far that his village is on fire. He starts running in worry and confusion while comforting himself that it might not be on fire. He reaches the front gate where he can see the bodies of all his family members who got caught in the fire while trying to run away. He walks towards Alma, who is dead with her eyes open and resting on a box. It boils him with anger, pushing him to activate his eyes and use his demon's power, Soul Viewer, which allows him to see the souls of his loved ones leaving their bodies. He can also see how they all died. Those holy knights came to check this village, tracing the presence of a demon, and learning how they got this dragon meat, affirmed there was a strong being like a demon residing in this village, who procured the dragon meat. Those villagers did not spill the beans about who was the one behind all this, and as a result, they all died a cruel death. This turning of events reminds him of an incident in his life in Japan, where he could not save someone. Similarly, the death of his loved ones has fed him up with this unreasonable world where he cannot save anyone. One can see his face full of resentment and anger towards those wrenched humans. He searches for their location using his soul searcher and easily directs a powerful attack towards them, creating a blast like that of an explosion. In hell, he was cornered by demons and almost died due to never-ending wars, but he had to live, which pushed him to adopt the demonic characteristics. He deceived them and ate their souls and meat. His inner core became like that of a demon. When he came into this world, he planned to get information about this village, and in case they resisted, he was prepared to eliminate every soul. But these people filled him with warmth and love, and removed every pitch-black stain from his corrupted heart. He is losing himself in anger, and his demon side is taking over him. He cannot think other than questioning Satan if he will take away even his peace of mind. If it is bound to happen if he has to lose everything, then he is willing to destroy each and everything. He has almost come into his demon form, which is far different from when he was in hell, maybe due to his acceptance of demonic core. Suddenly, Alma's soul enters his spiritual core and stops him from going berserk. He tries to break free, but the girl stops him anyway. He starts crying that they were his only family, but he lost them. She does not want him to lose himself, and embraces him to let him carefully listen to something. Dome. In reality, he comes to his senses and opens a box after following the voices, where he can see a kid crying and has a necklace that he gave to Alma. Kaku realizes this is the same kid Arnott entrusted to him, so he carries the baby while crying, and makes an oath that he will take this baby Ars as his son and raise him as the happiest child of the world with his soul. Bro is the dad who stepped up. When Kaku is going through hell even in this world, those bastards Zeus and Satan are playing chess calmly. They both are cruel to the core and discuss that Kaku was a lowly demon with power comparable to the highest-ranking demons. See their irony. They know that according to the prophecy that the kid Kaku picked is going to destroy him someday. After all, a demon and a human cannot spend their lives together. In the demon realm, we see the demon emperor Zel Melkanos Lucifer sitting on his throne. His minion reports to him about the recent incident where Kaku eliminated the entirety of Holy Army with his one shot. However, they don't know Kaku's identity, so looking at the power scale, they consider this unknown demon caster equal to or stronger than Lucifer. Anyways, they have an insect lord skilled in research and investigation who has formed a unit and mobilized it on the site. Lucifer does not seem to be fascinated by this move and orders his minion to withdraw right away. Hades offers to check in on this matter himself, but someone else shuts him up. Lucifer misunderstands Kaku's intentions and considers him quick-witted enough to hide himself very cleverly and remove his footprints so as not to be followed. Furthermore, if he has made a move on the Holy Army, then he can prove useful to Lucifer. On the other hand, in the human realm, we see the Calamira Church Pop, Arlius de Calamira, and his family coming out in public to give God blessings and celebrate the birth of their successor, a saint. Her birth is hope for the people because according to legend she will find a hero for her people. Looking at the public cheering for them, it seems Pop is a good lad and takes care of his nation. The knight Zedi Kruger mentions that the birth of a saint indicates that the human realm will soon be in danger too. The goddess tells the men to calm down since the saint will guide the hero with the goddess's blessings. Now comes our poor MC, taking care of his adopted son. They have moved to another village where his morning routine is milking goats with the struggle and preparing it for his son. Being a papa for a month and a half has made him capable of taking care of his kid, or so he says. Raising a kid is a real struggle, especially if the kid is a naughty brat. Kaku feels like the kid is too energetic, totally unexpected from a kid of 2 months. Kaku boils milk in a pot carefully, cools it down to the body temperature, and feeds Ars through a feeder, but Ars has some weird taste buds. He takes just one sip and starts making weird faces, unlike a child who dies to have milk by any means. Kaku gladly adapts other methods. He uses nut jam and sugar cubes to refine the taste, but again Ars pukes the tasty milk after one sip. Going through trials right in the morning and getting no results puts Kaku in distress. However, he does not give up. He gets up to change Arce's clothes soaked with milk. But again, Arce is not a normal kid and resists back with his small limbs. He somehow takes off Arce's clothes, washes them, and uses different magic spells to put him to sleep. Kaku was surely underestimating raising a kid when he made a contract to make him his son. He has spent 2,000 years in hell and learned a bunch of magic skills, so he thought he would try them and raise a kid smartly, but all in vain. There is no spell to make a crying kid laugh, or a spell that does the laundry for you. He has come to the realization a mother is an important figure in a person's life. All this stuff reminds him of his hell time, but seeing Arce's sleeping face recovers his strength and puts his mind at ease. He wonders if Arnon and boys have felt like this. Now Arce is sleeping soundly. There is silence enough that Kaku also dozes off, but he is a father as well a mother. He takes a long breath and does all house chores till Arce gets up. How mother-like of our demon boy. Anyways, they have moved to the Elvrant country that is in the southern continent from his previous village, because he had expected Church Nation would pursue him. Right now, Kaku is living in his dream house that he has been wanting for 2,000 years in hell. Basically, it is the renovated house of ancient elf's ruined fortress, and located in a suitable position blended with nature and without a sign of human activity. He has put a barrier around it in order to avoid the trace of any magic, if by any chance holy knights lurk around here. In short, he needs to treasure this house by any means. But just as he said it, a sudden blast occurs within his house that opens his mouth in surprise. Kaku rushes inside and checks out his baby is fine and well, but there is a hole in the roof. He wonders who can even infiltrate his damn sweet home. While wondering and looking for the source of the hole, Arce sneezes off and throws a fire right at Kaku's face. Kaku starts contemplating how Arce has the ability to use magic when there was no one in Jolan village a magic user. He concludes the only possibility is the dragon meat that he brought the last time when Jolan was pregnant. This meat might have affected Arce in his earlier development stage, and thus now he is born with dragon-type magic in his body. All blame for the birth of an abnormal child is on our MC. Kaku makes several chibi Kaku dolls, and assigns them to do house chores. However, these dolls are not efficient, and Kaku has to manage each doll separately for individual chores, which infuriates him because he is directing them as well as monitoring them, doubling the effort. Kaku is tired, but he does not give up and becomes determined to raise Arce on his own. However, 2 weeks later, Kaku becomes an exhausted zombie from taking care of an exceptional kid. Doing house chores and raising a newborn child is one thing. Arce is a naughty and magic born who can cause an explosion with a cough, a tornado with a laugh, shoots a water cannon when bedwetting, and thunder when he cries. He does not have this much time to repair his house. When finally Arce is going to sleep, Kaku also wishes to fall asleep, but he cannot lose his spirits. However, while putting him to sleep, Kaku falls asleep unwillingly, which identifies how exhausted his body is. We have to accept it, even a single mother cannot raise this kind of child. Leaving house chores aside, Kaku is put in the dream of his life in Japan when he was a human child. His dad plans to move with his family due to his work business, but Kaku does not agree with changing his school time. Being in a rebellious age, he decides to stay there and earn his own money to pay rent and live alone. He does not listen to his dad any further and runs to his room where he sees his family picture and remembers his late mom. Kaku opens his eyes from his deep sleep and suddenly feels someone beside him. Several goblins were going to attack him sneakily, but they ran away quickly when he looked back with his aura. He notices Arce is nowhere to be found, and suspects goblins have taken him. He turns on his eyes and traces the footprints of those goblins while regretting what the point of a barrier is when goblins have infiltrated without him noticing anything. He has failed as a father. Going through the jungle, he reaches a point where an elf is carrying Arce and choking a goblin. She is the dark elf who seems to be a servant of the master standing aside. Kaku goes to him to tell him he is the father of the kid. The fat guy and elf were actually on their way to Holy City and encountered goblins carrying a baby. The fat guy believes Kaku and asks Urza, the elf, to give the kid back to his father. Kaku goes to pick up Arce, but she holds him back and suspiciously asks Kaku if he really is the father. Kaku reveals that they are in the Volkli Great Forest, where it is said a fire dragon lives and no one dares to approach it. This old road is far from the main road, so it is only natural for her to think he can be a bad person. He cannot tell her the details, but ensures that the child is the most precious person in his life. Urza seems to be satisfied with his answer considering how he uttered those words with emotions. She gives him back Arce and apologizes to him for stepping out of her boundaries. However, Kaku does not buy it, as she was his son's life savior. After that, she goes back to her carriage without any struggle, which means she is an obedient servant. Kaku has also been wondering if he is a father figure to Arce. He only has been raising Arce not for Arce's sake, but for his own sake. He is just selfish about involving Arce in his solitary life, and raising him alone with the thought that people close to them will lose one day. However, he does not want his kid to separate him from his experience of having friends, love, and dreams. This time he will protect people important to them with his own hands, and will do his best for Arce. He raises Arce in the air, and asks what Arce wants. He gets a flashback of his old friends, and decides to add someone to their family for the both of them. In the southern part of Vaucley Forest, we see some folks returning after stealing the dragon's egg and passing by the heavenly waterfall. They are covered with magic barriers that erase their presence and magic traces. Moreover, they sacrificed 8 combat servants and 4 ranked demon apes to sink the dragon into the basin of the waterfall, so they are assured that the dragon won't come out unscathed. The men argue among themselves for the division of the loot. Suddenly, the dragon evaporates all the water from the waterfall using his fire and takes off in the air. Luckily, he cannot trace those folks because of the barrier and moves towards the town across the other part of the sea. They are saved, but the other town is going to see hell pretty soon. On the other hand, Kaku has come out of his home to Port Town, located along the Albat River, and the nearest city to his hideout. Well, he is anxious and nervous because he hasn't been in a crowd for a long time. The forest on the other side is the territory of the fire dragon, which means that the enraged fire dragon is on its way to this town. Trouble seems to always find our boy, doesn't it? Dolu's town, a hub for merchants from different regions and languages that communicate with each other and make their moves to earn profit. Whatever, Kaku has come to buy a servant, basically a hometaker to take care of his house, and a babysitter for Ars. He has abandoned the policy of raising Ars alone and has come to find a family member, which sort of makes it seem like he is here to look for a wife. People around him are looking surprised because he seems to be a rich lad looking at his fancy clothes and he has a baby with him, so he is the easiest target. Some robbers even run after him. Tuti is terrified of the situation as he can't use magic either, and finding a trustworthy and useful servant is kinda distressing. Servants in this country are those who have committed a crime, but he wants a trustworthy one who can deal with Ars's magical outbursts. Suddenly, he recalls that Urza has all qualities befitting for his pretend wife criteria, and he regrets letting a talented person like her go. He pulls himself together and listens to some guys gossiping that Sebas of keen insight is going to visit this town. Kaku knows that this Sebas, who goes by the name Louis Sebasta, and runs a large Sebasta company that deals a lot of things from gold to food to special servants. He is known to be a big shot for being a supplier for the Lawrence royal family. Kaku is super excited about this news and decides to find Sebas and become acquainted with him. He must have someone capable who falls in Kaku's criteria. In the abandoned house on the bank of Pamola, Urza has been resting and wondering why she trusted Kaku that easily when she thought she lost the ability to trust anyone. Her master pops up and informs her the ship is ready to depart. On the other hand, Kaku ends up getting involved in a problem because Ars sneezed and set his store on fire, so he is running with his all might with the owner of the store following him in anger. He is finally cornered in an alley where he can't run any further or use any magic, so he tries to negotiate with the guards and find any other way, but the guard does not trust Kaku's swindling face. Then out suddenly, people around them start making a commotion because the dragon is hovering directly above their heads. She seems to know where Kaku is and throws a fire shot toward him. Luckily, everyone has run away, so Kaku blocks this fire with his bare hand. Kaku finds this opportunity a good one to run away, as he stands out too much, but observes his surroundings burning in raging fire, which reminds him of a fire in his village. He hesitates to run away due to his guilt and conscience. Meanwhile, Urza is on her way to this town and finds out the dragon is running a rampage. When she finds out the children and special servants are falling behind an escape, she moves on her own in a calculated way to help them. Kaku is still contemplating what action he should take. If he uses his power and defeats the dragon, then the Holy Army will locate his position and Ars's life will be in danger. Similarly, he wonders if he should run away for Ars's safety. One can see he is struggling against his desire to fight the dragon. At the same time, Urza comes into action and binds the dragon's limb using the ship's anchor chains. She runs toward the dragon on those chains and uses the sharp dagger to deal with her in a badass way. Moreover, she cuts down the dragon's limbs, fidget spinner style. Kaku recognizes Urza as the same woman he met back in the forest. She can see the dragon is slowing down due to wounds on her body. Those humans must have done something dirty that made the dragon angry enough to even attack others. However, she does not have a chance of winning against the wounded dragon, so she uses her technique Dusk to blind the dragon's eyes and gives her multiple shots to buy some time for people to escape. The people start cheering her on, but the spell only lasts for a while. Just when it wears down, the dragon hits Urza using her tail. She is thrashed back to the building. Moreover, the dragon starts preparing to throw a fire. In this crucial time, her hero Kaku saves her from fire and takes her back to some alley as a token of thanks for saving his kid. She is confused about why and what he is doing there, but Kaku does not give her an answer right away. Instead, he lets her hold Ars and requests her to use that blinding spell on everyone for a while. He will go and exterminate dragon when everyone is blind. Urza is shunned while Ars cutely sees her face. Without having any other choice, she uses her skill Dusk and puts everyone blind, just like they are inside a black barrier. The poor dragon is also confused about what's going on. After all, he cannot see anything but black. Kaku catches her attention and drives her mad. She runs toward him while roaring and enraging. Meanwhile, Kaku uses his power to blow a strong shot, piercing the dragon's chest. After such an amazing power show, Kaku walks toward Urza and politely requests if she can become Urza's mother. Urza just looks at him in shock because to any sane person this is a marriage proposal after the first date. A few months ago in the country of the magic Lawrence, the first Prince Eliud Lawrence assigned a top-secret mission to Urza of the Intelligence Department. There will be a secret meeting held between a dark guild's merchant and a noble at the old knight's quarters, which is related to the exchange of a forbidden magic tool, and it can threaten the safety of citizens. So she has to get rid of the merchant before this exchange takes place. This innocent girl sneaks into the knight's quarters and finds a suspicious person with a weird mask. Taking this chance, she quietly plunges into him and stabs right at his chest. But unfortunately, this man is none other than the king, who Urza recognizes by the voice. This was a trap set by the first prince. She is brought in the presence of a prince and sentenced to the punishment. She will become a servant for the crime of high treason. She raises a voice for herself and tells everyone he was the one who gave her this mission by himself, but her voice is suppressed after all. Who would believe such a girl without any proof? She even calls her brother, but they don't respond to her out of embarrassment. She is imprisoned in a cell where she listens to gossip about her clan that she is not executed even though she attempted to dispose off the king, because they are afraid of retribution from her clan. She bursts into tears with regret and reason that she trusted the prince, but how he repaid her with a betrayal. She almost annihilated the king, whom she respected like her father. As she is sentenced to be a special servant, a trade master picks her up to move into Elverent town, where someone might take her in. To avoid inspection, he decides to go through the Volkly Old Road, and on the same road she sees goblins carrying a child. She does her best to defeat those goblins and save that child, and it is the first time she meets Kaku. The scene shifts to the present, when Kaku proposes her to be Urza's mother. How would you react when you are proposed out of nowhere? She also turns red with embarrassment. Kaku realizes a few seconds later what blunder he has made, and shyly clarifies it. He does not mean it in any vulgar way. Moreover, her master pops up and disturbs their romance, so he apologizes to them, but they bluntly deny it is not what he sees. Was anyone looking for Sebas? Here he is. The old fart master is Sebas. He asks Urza if it was her who defeated the dragon, but she denies it and is about to reveal the truth. Kaku interrupts her, and blabbers random stuff about how some natural phenomenon took the dragon down. Sebas seems a trustworthy and honest man who saved those kids from the dragon. They are standing beside the boat and crying with all their might with terror of the dragon. Urza goes to comfort them and ensures they have no lingering danger of the dragon. Well, Sebas is planning to send these children to the Church of the Holy City, and for Urza, he asks Kaku if he is interested in buying her. Without any delay, Kaku agrees to buy her, but he wants to make something confirm with her at first. He reintroduces himself as the mid-level merchant from the Ural Kingdom, and he wants Urza to become this child's wife. He saw with his own eyes how capable she was. She had something that he lacked, which convinced him to believe her. He is willing to nullify her servant contract, so he wants her to answer him as his equal, not as a servant. He inquires her again if she will give him the strength to raise this child together. The flashback of her past crime runs through her eyes, which compels her to refuse his kind proposal. She does not consider it right to get freedom without atoning for her crime. Further, she does not deem herself qualified to become a mother. Kaku does not sulk at her rejection and accepts her answer wholeheartedly. Sebas is a quick-witted man and smokes there is something wrong. He mentions he is going to take time to prepare for departure. Meanwhile, wants Kaku to treat her wounds with the first aid bandages he brought. Bro just set our boy up to rizz up this fine baddie. Kaku takes her aside and tends to her injuries by covering them with first aid bandages. Meanwhile, he assesses her soul using the devil eye and determines almost everything that happened to her and what is bugging her. She has a sense of disappointment and loyalty towards someone, betrayal by some trusted one, and regret that exceeds far to the point she refused him earlier. Kaku is surprised she is acting calm and doing her best not to disturb her environment, which can be possible only if she is a long-lived dark elf, or she has had her mother's instincts since she was born. These facts compel him to want her, and rizz her up real good. When he is done tending to her, Urza's stomach growls with hunger, so he asks her to take care of him for a while more. Urza understands now why she can trust him. Whenever they met, he trusted her to take care of his child. It reminds her of how her brother completely abandoned her without trusting her any word. It is a kind of PTSD that starts to make her anxious and uncomfortable. Kaku can feel her anxiety and talks with her that she does not seem unqualified to be a mother. He is not aware of what crime she committed, but her hands have saved a lot of lives, and that's what matters the most to him and his son. He manipulates her thinking, and hits her with the hurtful fact that constantly being punished is not an atonement for her crime. She loses her cool, and explodes with self-deprecating statements that she won't give up on making up her sins by any means, and she would like to choose punishment over living a happy life with him. Someone strong like him would never understand what she is going through. Her ruckus wakes up little boy Ars, and what does a child do on waking up suddenly? Cries. Ars starts crying while brewing a tornado so as to avoid any calamity. Urza lowers down her voice and calms him down. Kaku does not deny the fact he is strong, but this strong being cannot look after him as she does, and can't change diapers like mothers do. His son was abducted when he got distracted, so he needs someone honest to help him take care of their child. He strikes her with a reasonable deal that she will look after his baby while he lets her atone for her sins. He is sure she can atone for sins with something that comes from the justice she believes in. Delighted Wanbro. This justice thing brings her old memories she spent with the king. Once he took her to the orphanage to see what his atonement was for the crime. He did. Since when he sat on his throne, he has been forcing people to take part in several unwanted wars that resulted in children with their parents being annihilated. He advised her if ever she has to stain her hands for the sake of the country, then she has to use her power for the future of the children. Tears start flowing down her cheeks after reminiscing all this stuff. She decides what she must do to atone for her sins thanks to the cheap speech of Kaku. She will create a future where children will live happily. Kaku is satisfied with this answer as they have similar interests. Then he reaches his hands to her with the hope that they will begin a new life that will fill their kid's life with happiness. She hesitates a little but finally joins his hands where he promises to prove to her that he will never betray her. While the dragon wrecks up the ship, Subais looks over the town. His henchmen come behind him demanding to know why he wants to follow the lunatic girl who ran off all on her own. Subais tells the man to steer the ship because he wants to follow. The man argues that Subais even risked crossing the border for this woman. She is just a simple servant. Why do they need to look out for her? Subais reminds the man that to look after such people is their responsibility. Other than that, someone from her original country has requested to take care of her for him. Subais looks over to the town with his telescope. He notices that the dragon is landing now so they can join Urza. He tells the man that it is their time to play the hero and save all the children. An old man with a funny beard looks at the body of the dragon. He wonders how such a giant thing was taken down. No one was able to see what happened. Everything went dark, and then there was a loud sound, similar to thunder. When the old man followed the dragon, it had already been taken down. No human is capable of taking down such a massive dragon all by themselves. Either this was natural or something much worse. The people start salvaging things from the dragon to sell for gold coins. The man joins the crowd because he needs money to build back his burnt store too. A buff man climbs on top of the dragon's belly and tells everyone to stop. The kid tries to argue with the dude, but the man just knocks the guy's head clean off. The man introduces himself as Vridra, the Lion King. He declares that from now on, this city is his territory. The old man looks at the man with disgust. Vridra tells the people to obey him if they want jobs in his newly claimed territory. Vridra is suddenly dropping through the sky in total panic. She screams, asking what is happening, while Kaku, hanging there way too casually, tells her to hold on, and reminds her this is teleportation magic. Urza snaps right back that this is not what she means. Kaku ignores the crisis energy completely, and welcomes her anyway, calling the place their sweet home. Then he apologizes for the rough arrival and tells her not to worry because they can fly. Yeah, that is not helping your case, bro. A few hours earlier, at Pamola's abandoned house, Urza asks how he plans to prove he will not betray her. Kaku says it is not that complicated. He says they will use a contract. Urza stares at him, thrown off, while he calmly keeps going. Servant contracts are seal magic that create a master-servant relationship under fixed conditions, and that when the contract is made, the terms have to be entered properly. Urza asks if he is really willing to become a servant, and he answers instantly, with a big grin that of course he is. Then he adds the twist. From now on, they will each be the other's master, and at the same time each other's servants. And they say romance is dead. Kaku leans in close and tells Urza he calls this the mutual servant contract. Urza blurts out shocked while trying to process it. Subais nearby jokes that this sounds like they will each be the other's master, almost like a marriage. Kaku immediately pushes back and says no, that is not what he meant, he just phrased it badly. Then the contract proceeds anyway. They are told to stamp blood on each other's seals. The two of them are seated face to face as the seal takes hold. Tal's back in the present. Kaku brings Urza to a renovated old fort in the Volkli Great Forest and says he turned it into a hidden base. Urza repeats the words under her breath, still trying to catch up, and follows him inside. Inside, the room is a mess. Books, tools, boxes, and random clutter are everywhere. Kaku rubs the back of his head and admits it is a bit messy. Urza notices a spot giving off black magic power and asks about it. Kaku says it is just the bones and skins he collected from dragons or strong magic beasts. He adds that it only looks suspicious because he piled it all up in one place. Urza says okay, but inside she is not calm at all. She watches Kaku talk to baby Ars and thinks there is no normal explanation for this man. He uses teleportation magic, flying magic, cast without incantations, and can beat a dragon like it is nothing. In her head, he has to be either some legendary hero or a demon general. Then she looks at his grin and immediately thinks his face still looks like a scammer. No one is beating those allegations. Once they are home, Kaku says they should review the contract conditions. He lays them out plainly. He will help Urza atone. In return, she is to help raise his child. He asks if her way of atoning is helping orphans, and that becomes one side of the deal. The other side is Kaku's condition. Urza is to become Urza's mother. Urza goes quiet. Then she answers that if that is the agreement, she will do her best to become a mother. Kaku accepts that right away and shifts into work mode. He says he will handle the field and the livestock before sunset and tries to give work to Urza, who just says she will clean up the room in the meantime. Kaku gives a small okay and heads off. Time passes. Urza stays inside with Urza after cleaning up the room, while Kaku works. She hears small chimes, watches him outside hauling things around, and notices he can even control a golem or some other construct while working. That only makes him feel even less readable. She keeps telling herself that if she keeps overthinking him, it will never end. He is trying his best to earn her trust. He even saved her life. Still, her anxiety keeps coming from somewhere deeper than simple suspicion. She admits to herself that she already trusts him, but the real fear is different. She looks at her bandaged hand, then at the darker, uglier side of herself she cannot forget, and asks whether someone like her is really fit to become a mother. That thought drags Urza into her oldest memories. Kaku comes back around, then and sees a fainted Urza, but we slip into Urza's past. She remembers training with her real brother in the village. She remembers how the men became warriors, and talented women could as well, while those who did not fight were separated off. Her brother was gifted. Her father was both the village chief and a strict teacher. Urza remembers thinking that if she did not do her best, she would be left behind. She remembers the pressure, the rules, and the way the world around her was built. Then the memory turns darker. In her small world, she says, it was as if she had no mother. A voice answers that she is right. Her mother did not exist. Later, Urza wakes up in bed. Kaku has fallen asleep beside her chair. She softly calls out, and he jolts awake in a full panic, then immediately slumps in relief, and says he is so glad she is awake. Urza asks how long she has been asleep, and he tells her it has been 2.5 days. He blames himself for not making her rest after the earlier fight, and says she still has a slight fever, so she needs to stay still. He apologizes again and says that if only he could use healing magic, this would have been easier. That catches Urza's attention. She asks him, surprised, if there is magic he cannot use. Kaku answers with a plain yes. Of course there is. Then he says almost lightly, how amazing it would be if he could use every kind of magic. Urza just stares at him, because this man really keeps being absurd in completely new directions. Kaku then hands her a tiny doll version of himself and tells her that if she needs anything while he is out, she can call him with it. He proudly explains that he put a spell into it, so the owners of the dolls can communicate even from far away. He calls it a portable mini Kaku. Right after that, he shows her the vegetable soup he already prepared and says he preserved it with magic so it would still be warm when she woke up. He also leaves water and warns her not to try eating too quickly. In her head, Urza wonders why this guy can't use healing magic. Then Kaku heads out again. Urza watches the room he prepared, the clothes, the food, the care, and realizes he has been nursing her while also taking care of a child. That pulls out another memory. She remembers a time in childhood when she was bedridden after a serious training injury. When she woke up then, her mother had been sitting beside her, taking care of her. Urza remembers feeling like her mother apologized to her. She remembers her bruised cheek and thinks she may have stood up to Urza's father. That moment was small. The conversation itself was nothing special, but just having her mother there beside her made it the happiest point in Urza's childhood. From there, Urza's thoughts finally settle. She tells herself that is what a mother is. If she simply tries her best to be a parent, then the feeling should come through, even if she is an unknown monster, even if the child does something wrong. Lying there, she smiles faintly and says maybe she can do this after all. She reaches for the soup, struggles with her bandaged hand, fumbles the spoon and drops it. Then she tastes it. Her eyes well up. She grips the blanket, and she quietly says it is delicious. The next morning, Kaku shows up carrying Ars, bright and cheerful, and greets Urza with a warm good morning. Urza is now dressed properly, and meets him with a calm smile, but the domestic peace lasts about 2 seconds. She points out that the room is messy again, and calls him out because Ars still has not had the diaper changed. Kaku panics and rushes in trying to fix it. That instantly turns into a crash. A huge hole gets blasted into the wall, and both of them end up standing there in the rubble, staring at the damage. Kaku can only mutter that there is a hole in the wall again. Urza looks at the wreckage, then at him and thinks there is seriously something wrong with both of them. This is already going downhill. Kaku sits across from Urza at the table, hands folded like this is some ultra-serious strategy session. Urza stands straight and listens. Between them, he frames the whole problem as their first family meeting, with Ars's magic rampages as the main issue. Ars is in the foreground, babbling happily and reaching out, completely unaware of how much stress he is causing. Right after that, Kaku shifts into explanation mode and lays out a reference sheet about the races of this world, running through humans, demons, angels, and the other groups he knows about. You can look at this yourself if you are that invested. The scene moves into their new daily routine. Urza is already outside sweeping and handling chores while Kaku is still in bed. She wakes him up and pushes him toward the work he is supposed to be doing, and he gets dragged out of bed in a mess. Urza carries laundry, manages the room, and helps with the housework, while Kaku handles the livestock. He reflects that life has changed a lot since Urza recovered from her fever 2 days earlier. Because the chores are now split up, he has more free time, and his training with the mini Kakus is going smoothly too. Still, one worry keeps bothering him. Urza knows how to do so much, and he starts wondering whether he is even needed that much around the house anymore. So late, that worry sharpens when it comes to Ars. Urza comes in to get goat milk. Kaku tries to feed Ars first, holding the baby and offering the bottle, but Ars reacts badly and fusses. Urza takes over, and the difference is immediate. Ars drinks calmly in her arms and looks completely content. Kaku watches that happen right in front of him, and the jealousy hits almost instantly. He realizes Ars is getting more attached to Urza than to him, and that clearly bothers him more than he wants to admit. Kaku tries to fight that feeling by throwing himself into breakfast. He gets fired up, decides he will prove he can be reliable too, and cooks with way too much confidence. The pan flares up, the meat looks incredible, and he serves the plate like he just pulled off a masterpiece. Urza takes a bite and honestly seems pleased. Kaku gets smug for a second and starts talking himself up. Then he tastes it himself, freezes and realizes the whole thing is awful. He has mixed up sugar and salt so the dish looks perfect and tastes completely cursed. Urza stays polite about it anyway, that almost makes it worse. Urza then calmly starts connecting the dots. She thanks Kaku for stopping her from taking over the kitchen completely, saying every family has its own taste, but she does not let the real issue go. At the table, while Kaku talks about going out to catch magic bugs in the field, Ars starts getting noisy again. Kaku moves to handle him and the baby immediately pees all over him. After that little disaster, he calls for another family meeting. Arza says the strange part is not that Ars is special. The strange part is that Ars only seems to use magic when Kaku is the one taking care of him. Kaku does not understand at first. Arza then says it plainly. She thinks the source of Arza's magical rampages is Kaku himself. That lands hard. Kaku goes full shock mode. Arza explains her reasoning step by step. She points out that Kaku tries to entertain Ars with magic and effort, but when Ars cries or gets upset, Kaku does not actually soothe him the way Ars wants. From Urza's point of view, Ars may be reacting to Kaku's actions rather than just randomly losing control. Kaku immediately folds in on himself and starts calling himself a failure as a parent. Urza, still calm, confirms that he has been missing the point, but she also says that means they can fix it. If he starts responding to Ars in the way Ars actually needs, the outbursts should calm down. Then she adds something even more important. If Kaku really keeps trying his best as a parent, those feelings will reach Ars to arc R. That idea changes everything. Kaku clings to it so hard he practically begs Ars to confirm it for him, which only makes Ars cry louder. But after that, a short time skip shows the result. Kaku starts handling Ars more like Urza suggested, and Ars stops having magical outbursts around him. Several days pass. Instead of feeling relieved though, Kaku starts spiraling again. Standing alone outside, he wonders whether he is actually needed in this family at all. Then he turns toward the field and gets hit with a second problem. The wheat field is ruined. Rain is coming down and the crop is basically gone. Urza explains that wheat was not a good choice there in the first place. The region's seasons do not suit it, and staple foods in that area are closer to rice and potatoes. Kaku stares at the destroyed field and sinks deeper into frustration, convinced that everything he does backfires. He even circles back to the thought that Ars is attached only to Urza. Then he snaps himself out of it. He reminds himself why he made the contract with Urza in the first place, and decides to do the one thing he still can: leave for the Holy City, go to the Merchant Guild, secure money and find buyers. Using his introductions and guild paperwork, he gets himself registered there. At the guild, Kaku starts building connections fast. He meets merchants who deal in salt and shipping, and listens as they explain the regional problems in detail. During the rainy season, the river floods, roads and ferries get blocked, and inland detours become dangerous because of magic beasts. The recent dragon incident made it even worse by throwing the nearby routes into chaos. They do not have the money to switch to safer alternatives either. Kaku listens, thinks it through, and then comes back the next day with severed monster legs as proof that the beasts on the route have already been dealt with. At first he presents it like he hired mercenaries. Then, when pressed, he casually admits there were no mercenaries, and that he handled it himself. Since the merchants still cannot pay much, he offers a trade instead. They give him market prices, sales channels, and introductions to their business partners, and he gives them the result they needed. Honestly, that hustle works. The plan pays off almost immediately. Kaku gets introduced to a shipping company, and the next meeting goes well enough that they want to keep doing business with him. He is thrilled. Back in his room, the portable mini Urza contacts him and congratulates him on making progress in just 2 days. Kaku gets embarrassingly proud of himself, starts celebrating in his own head, and then warns Urza that he will be busy the next day and might not be able to answer if she calls. After that, he lies down, talks to Ars through the distance in his own way, and promises that he will keep becoming more reliable. The next day, the business meeting keeps moving forward. A merchant named Silga is enthusiastic. The samples are getting praised, and Kaku is right in the middle of pushing things toward a real deal. Then the mini Urza starts ringing. Kaku notices it immediately. He also remembers that he already warned her he might not be able to pick up. So instead of answering, he forces a smile, insists he is fine, and keeps the meeting going. Inside, though, he is cracking. He keeps telling himself he cannot let this fail, because if even this falls apart, he has nothing left he can point to and say he is useful for. Later, when he finally answers, the mood flips instantly. The mini Urza urgently tells him that Ars is in trouble. Kaku's expression changes on the spot, and he teleports back through the rain. He bursts inside and reaches Ars, who is burning with intense heat. The air around the crib is warped by the temperature. Kaku panics and asks what happened. Urza explains that Ars developed a fever earlier in the day, but the violent burning only started recently. Kaku looks at Ars and realizes this is what Urza had been trying to contact him about the whole time. Yeah, that one hurts. Kaku checks Ars closely and notices that the symptoms do not match a normal illness. Ars has no rash, and his breathing is still normal. Kaku starts panicking out loud over everything he cannot do. He cannot make medicine for something when he does not know the cause. Healing magic would not help if the source is wrong. He even starts wondering whether Arza's dragon-related traits are somehow involved. He says he will go gather herbs anyway, but Urza stops him physically. It is midnight, raining hard, and Kaku does not know the local plants. Urza points out that she can see clearly at night, and that he should stay with Ars instead. Then she heads out herself. Kaku is left standing there alone, feeling completely useless. Urza weakly reaches toward him anyway, like he is still trying to comfort his father. Kaku breaks down and apologizes to him. Urza comes back early, not with ordinary herbs but with a plant she remembered hearing about from a village elder, the Devil's Walking Stick. She explains that it is a kind of magic tree that grows rapidly by consuming a huge amount of magic power. She had gone to collect herbs, but this plant at the forest entrance made her remember the story. Kaku helps her bring it in. The moment it is used, the plant explodes into growth, branches and fruit spreading all around the crib in a glowing mass. Ars lies in the center while the tree absorbs the overflowing power from his body. Urza then explains the real cause. Some elf babies with unusually strong magic can lose control because their bodies cannot keep up with their own power. The Devil's Walking Stick can absorb that excess. Kaku hears that and finally understands that Ars was not suffering from an ordinary fever at all. He was in a magic rampage. Once the excess magic is drained, Ars's fever starts dropping. Kaku is overwhelmed with relief and immediately turns that into confession. He says he has been a fool, so focused on making up for his failures through work that he failed to notice what was right in front of him. He admits he neglected Ars, and worse, he let jealousy take over. Urza answers honestly. She says Ars cried a lot when she was not around, especially once the fever started, and that having her there is the most calming thing possible for him. Then she pauses and quietly adds that the same is true for her too. Kaku just shatters. Tears start falling, and all he can do is thank her. After that, they decide to keep using the Devil's Walking Stick regularly, so Ars's excess magic does not build up again. With the crisis over, they reset the household properly. Instead of bottling things up, they agree to speak honestly, divide responsibilities by what each of them is best at, and stop trying to carry everything alone. Then Urza proudly announces that she made breakfast this time. She brings out a plate that looks absolutely lethal. Chopped goat hoof, bear paw, and undercooked mushroom sauce all piled together like a boss fight. Kaku stares at it in horror, tries to convince himself it will be fine because Urza made it with good intentions, forces a bite, and then drops face first into the plate. The final verdict is brutal and immediate. After all that growth, they still agree on one thing fast. Kaku should handle the cooking. Tsubai's jolts in shock. The moment Kaku says he wants to make himself a special servant, Kaku stays weirdly calm through that reaction and explains that he has his own reasons, but doing it in a normal way would be illegal. Then he immediately comes up with a workaround. With a huge grin, he says he does not have enough proper legal tender to buy Urza outright, so he plans to borrow the money and put himself on the line as a debt servant instead. Urza, standing there with Ars in her arms, is completely thrown off. When the money problem comes up again, Kaku pulls out a magic bag and starts offering a pile of magic beast materials as payment, and Tsubai's instantly perks up at the sight of them. Urza keeps staring at him, still trying to understand why he is going this far, and why he is making the whole thing so roundabout. Kaku turns serious for a second and frames it as his way of showing that he trusts her. That lands way harder than she expects. She freezes, her face goes red, and she just stands there silently embarrassed while Tsubai's gets excited over how valuable the materials are. Kaku is still all smiles, completely unaware of how badly he just blindsided her. After that, the scene shifts to Urza bringing up a complaint. It is night and Kaku is on the other end with Ars when she brings up teleportation. He already looks like he knows he is about to get called out. Urza focuses on one specific problem. Every time he teleports them somewhere, they end up appearing in the sky first. Kaku then starts explaining himself with a little visual breakdown. He says that without coordinate markers, he can only jump to a rough area, and if that goes wrong, they could end up inside the ground or underwater. Because of that risk, he has been choosing the sky on purpose as the safest default. Urza listens to all of this with a completely flat expression. Once that explanation is out, the obvious follow-up hits him immediately. Urza points out that he clearly knows about coordinate markers, so the real question is why he was not setting them properly in the first place. Kaku awkwardly admits that it was basically because setting them was a hassle. That answer gets him absolutely no goodwill at all. Faced with Urza's deadpan stare, he gives up on defending himself and immediately agrees to start setting markers from now on. Kaku is sitting at a bar in a dream, drinking with Arnaud while Alma listens from behind the counter. He talks about Ars with unusual seriousness, saying that raising him has made him feel needed, like his own existence is finally being acknowledged through protecting someone. Alma watches him and frames that as the behavior of a real father already. Then she pushes it one step further and suggests that the next step is becoming a real husband too. Arnaud immediately latches onto that and starts pressing him about Urza. Kaku tries to dodge it, insisting the relationship is only contractual and reminding him that he is a demon, not a human or elf. Arnaud does not let up. He keeps needling him, then goes so far that the whole thing turns into a chaotic, drunken attempt to demonstrate romance for him in person. Right when that gets completely out of hand, Kaku jerks awake. He wakes up in bed to find Urza leaning over him at very close range. Both of them freeze. Kaku is wide-eyed and flustered, and Urza, just as embarrassed, awkwardly explains that morning had already come and she had only been trying to wake him up. The moment hangs there for a second, then the scene pulls out to the fort in the Volkli Great Forest. After that, the focus shifts to Ars. A series of small moments around the house shows how much he has grown, with Kaku and Urza constantly hovering around him while he wanders, stares, grabs at things, and generally acts like the center of the world without even trying. Kaku finds Ars outside near the livestock, completely fascinated by a newborn baby goat. Ars is excited enough to treat the tiny goat like a new sibling, and Kaku kneels beside him and carefully explains that it is still just a baby and needs gentle handling. Then the mood flips into celebration. Kaku and Urza bring out a cake, set Ars in front of it, and reveal that they have decided to use the day Kaku found him as his birthday. Ars stares at the candle in total wonder while both of them clap for him from either side. Kaku reflects that it has now been 1 full year since he started raising Ars, and then he and Urza announce that they both prepared presents for him. The presents turn out to be a stack of books from Urza and an illustrated encyclopedia of magical creatures from Kaku. Kaku immediately thinks Urza has gone way too hard for a 1-year-old, but Urza counters that in her village gifted children start learning as soon as they can stand. Kaku objects based on normal human standards. Ars watches the two of them bicker over his education, listens for a beat, and then bursts out with the simple conclusion that fighting is bad. That stops both of them instantly. Kaku and Urza both melt on the spot, correct themselves, and accept that Ars has won that round with 0 effort. Then Ars loses interest in the serious discussion entirely and shifts toward what actually caught his eye in the encyclopedia. What he wants is bug catching. He grabs a net, proudly presents the idea, and Kaku explains that Ars wants to catch the creatures he saw in the book. Urza thinks the specific creatures from the encyclopedia probably are not even around there, but Kaku shrugs and lets Ars have his fun anyway. The three of them head out into the forest. Ars chases around with the net while Kaku and Urza follow behind, watching him and talking about what boys are like at that age. While they are walking, Urza briefly mentions wishing she could have seen Kaku when he was a child. Arnaud's words echo in his head about making the move on his so-called wife. That already has him off balance, and then a bat suddenly swoops nearby. Urza startles and jumps straight into him. Kaku catches her on reflex, and both of them go completely still once they realize how close they are. Then Ars breaks the moment by shouting and pointing deeper into the bush. Ars has found a juvenile fire dragon lying in the grass. He immediately calls it his older brother. Kaku freezes, Urza panics, and both of them react for very different reasons. Kaku tries to stay calm and read the situation, while Urza wants Ars nowhere near a dragon after everything that happened in Pamela. Ars ignores the fear around him, marches straight over and crouches beside the young dragon. Instead of attacking, the dragon lowers its head and lets Ars touch it. A moment later, Ars is sitting beside it, then leaning against it, and then openly treating it like family. Kaku can only stare. Urza is horrified but stuck watching because the dragon is not hostile at all. By the end of the day, Ars has become so attached to it that being taken away leaves him crying hard, and afterward he keeps glancing back toward the forest with a worried look. The next morning, Kaku oversleeps. He bolts upright, realizes there is a major auction in Pomola, and starts throwing clothes on in a panic. While getting ready, he notices that the glove he received from Alma is ripped. He has no time to fix it, but he also cannot wear it like that, so he reluctantly leaves it behind and rushes out. Urza sees the torn glove in the messy room, realizes how much he treasures it, and decides she is not letting that slide. Then the scene jumps to the auction hall in Pomola, where the place is loud, crowded, and full of rough energy. People recognize Kaku on sight. Rumors have spread about him, about hidden mercenaries that work under him, and about the increasingly shady state of the town. Kaku hears those whispers and realizes his fake mercenary story has grown way beyond what he first intended. When a bottle of rare Church Nation wine comes up for bid, Kaku suddenly throws out a price 10 times the opening amount. He drives the bid all the way to 200,000 because he wants the wine for Urza. He explains, with complete seriousness, that his wife is deeply religious and has always wanted the taste of wine from that sacred land, so he wants to bring it to her. His auction buddy there is amused by how devoted he sounds and hands him a small bonus gift in appreciation. Later, away from the crowd, he opens it and finds a pair of couple's rings. He stares at one of them and finally admits to himself that over the year he has fallen for Urza. But right after that, he pulls back and starts questioning everything. He reminds himself that he is a demon, that his existence is fundamentally different, and that demons do not live the same way normal people do. He wonders whether the feelings he has now are even truly his, or just leftovers from the human life he once had. Even so, once he notices that Urza's feelings are real too, he begins seriously thinking about giving her the ring. The rain is pouring by the time he gets home. Ars is waiting inside, and Urza calmly greets him. Kaku immediately asks about the glove. Urza tells him she repaired it and put it away properly, but then she teases him by implying she got rid of it because he clearly did not need it enough to take care of it. She treats the whole thing like a lesson that backfires instantly. Kaku explodes, grabs her, and demands how she could pretend to throw away something that important when she obviously knew its value. Urza is shaken. Ars looks at the adults with tears in his eyes because his parents are fighting. Urza admits that the glove was damaged, lying around and looked like trash. Kaku mocks her, asking whether in her hometown damaged items are respectfully offered to the goddess in ritual. Urza ends up striking him across the face. Both of them go silent. Urza walks off. Kaku stands there stunned, then says he needs to be alone and walks off, leaving Ars confused and alone. Kaku sits in the ruined room by himself with the wine bottle, replaying the fight over and over. He keeps telling himself Urza would never casually discard something precious, yet he also cannot find the glove, and that only drags him deeper into the mess in his head. He starts thinking about Alma and apologizes into the empty room, like old guilt is crashing into the present all at once. Before that spiral can settle, Urza comes to the door. She tries to speak to him gently, but before the conversation can really start, both of them realize Ars is gone. They rush outside into the rain. Kaku tracks Ars by following traces of his soul through the storm, and while they search, both of them start apologizing. Kaku admits that he mocked her hometown customs and that he was wrong for that. Urza admits that she hit him. The tension is still there, but now it is quieter, stripped down, and a lot more honest. They follow Ars's trail to a hollow among massive roots and find him asleep inside, curled up against the juvenile fire dragon from the day before. The dragon has come there to shelter him from the rain. Ars is hugging its head like it is the most natural thing in the world, and the dragon is calmly protecting him. Kaku looks at that and says there is no way he can scold Ars after seeing it. Urza then reveals the truth about the glove. She did not throw it away. She fixed it and kept it safe. She admits that her own lie at home was partly just an attempt to tease him. Urza responds by laying her feelings bare. She says she has seen his sloppy, pathetic side many times already, but she had never imagined him being genuinely angry. She realized that she had started depending on him too much and treating him as someone above ordinary flaws, almost like putting him on a pedestal. Kaku immediately drops to apology too, but Urza does not let him take all of it. She points out that the entire mess began because he leaves important things lying around carelessly in the first place. From there, the mood finally softens. Urza tells him that strange as it may sound, she feels relieved now because she can finally see that he is human too, in the emotional sense, not some perfect being standing above her. Kaku hears that and remembers the people in his past who treated him like a person, and how he ran from that instead of accepting it. He admits that he lost that chance once before, and does not want to run again. So there in the rain-soaked forest, with Urza asleep against a dragon and the argument finally burned out, Kaku kneels in front of Urza with the ring. He makes it clear that this has nothing to do with the contract anymore. Then he asks her to marry him. Urza goes still, blush spreading across her face as she processes what he just said. After that pause, she accepts. She does it gladly. The ring goes onto her finger, and this time their marriage stops being something held up by terms and conditions and becomes real. Alma lat and tied inside the fort. Ars is asleep on a round cushion beside the hearth, curled up against the juvenile fire dragon. Moonlight hangs outside the window. Urza sits on the sofa and turns toward Kaku, clearly still trying to sort something out, and asks whether Ars is really his biological son. Kaku answers from the other end of the sofa, hands behind his head, that Ars is actually the son of a late friend. Urza realizes that this explains why he ran so far away and ended up hiding in this place. Kaku agrees and says that even when he went after the supposed bandits, he was acting far more boldly than he should have. Urza follows that by asking about Kaku himself, and the question shifts toward why he is so abnormally good with magic. Kaku admits that he does not know the answer because he lost his memories. From there, Kaku thinks back over what he already told Urza after proposing to her. A montage runs through his head as he reflects that he told her almost everything except the two biggest secrets, that he is a demon from another world, and that the people he attacked back then were not simple bandits at all, but holy knights. Urza admits that what happened around the King of Lawrence really was an assassination attempt, and she accepts that as part of her own sin. Kaku reacts with visible shock, but he keeps listening. He recalls that Urza also told him about the rest of her past, her hometown, the period when she worked as an intelligence operative, and the fact that she had been betrayed by the first prince. Urza asks whether he is disappointed in her. Kaku says he is not, and that he was only surprised. Kaku reminds her that when they made the contract, he already decided to believe in the Urza he had actually seen for himself. He asks what she thinks of him. Urza goes quiet after that. She lowers her eyes, thinks for a beat, then asks about him in return. Kaku does not speak right away. In front of the fireplace, with Ars and Bors sleeping between them, Urza reaches out first. Kaku reaches back. Their fingers meet and close together, and Urza quietly admits that she feels the same way. Right after that, we jump forward in time to March of the year 1015 in the Holy Calendar, about a year and 5 months after Kaku started raising Ars. From that point, Kaku lays out the first major change since the Great Rain. Ars now has his first real friend. The little fire dragon is no longer just some dangerous creature that wandered into their lives. Ars runs around the yard calling to him. The dragon answers right back, and the two of them move like a pair already used to being together. Ars laughs while the dragon licks his face. This is the first true friend Ars has made. Ars combined the sound he used for the dragon with part of his own name, and the result became Bors. From there, Bors is simply treated as part of the family. The second big change is Ars's healing magic. Ars holds a small wounded creature in his hands, while glowing healing light gathers around his fingers. Ars watches from inches away, eyes wide and careful. Ars's other magical traits came from the dragon meat he consumed before. Then this healing ability must be part of his own latent talent instead. Urza immediately lights up. Her whole posture changes. She clenches both fists under her chin, beams with pride, and treats Ars's healing magic as something incredibly rare, almost sacred. In her eyes, Ars is nothing less than a prodigy. Then the third change appears, and this one comes straight from Kaku. Inside the house, he sits across from Urza and abruptly announces that he intends to obtain nobility. Urza stays composed and asks why, and Kaku starts explaining step by step. First, he says that to raise their child safely, they need proper status. Right now, they are only a small merchant, and his wife the kind of people who can be swept aside easily. On top of that, they still carry criminal records, so if their history comes out, the consequences would be severe. Urza answers that merchant privileges should already be more than enough. Kaku says she is jumping ahead, and that this only leads into the second reason. Then his expression sharpens into something much darker, and he says he wants enough power to crush the person who set her up. Yeah, that lands heavy. Urza is immediately alarmed. Alpsa is immediately alarmed. She points out how reckless that sounds, especially when the enemy is tied to the royal family of Lawrence. Kaku does not back down. Instead, he asks whether she really believes the first prince was the one who did it. He explains the logic carefully. As intelligence operatives, people like Urza can recognize the royal family's orders through contract magic. Even if someone uses magic or magical tools to disguise their appearance, those methods still have limits. If the disguised attacker could not be identified as a fake by those means, then that means another genuine member of the royal family must have taken the first prince's form. Kaku takes it one step further. He points out that the first prince had no reason to eliminate the king, because he was already first in line for succession. That makes it far more likely that this was the work of the second prince, or someone even further down the line, trying to drag the first prince down with him. Urza is visibly shaken by that conclusion. She then asks why Kaku would go this far, why he would try to become a noble just to uncover their identity. Kaku reminds her of the promise he made to her. He says that if her atonement means carrying out the king's will, then the king's danger cannot be ignored. In his eyes, this is part of the same promise. He says that when he makes a promise, he sees it through thoroughly. He ends up kneeling and taking Urza's hand in both of his, while she stares down at him in stunned silence. What a perfectly happy couple. Hopefully nothing bad will happen to them. Point for that serious mood gets broken by Ars outside. He is deep in full hero mode now, swinging a stick around while loudly casting himself as the strongest hero and assigning Bors the role of the enemy. He slashes downward, leaps in, shouts attack cries, and Bors commits to the bit completely by rearing, flapping, spinning, and whipping around the yard like a dramatic boss monster. Ars keeps charging back in, yelling grandly and swinging again. The whole mock battle gets louder and messier until dust starts flying everywhere. Urza, in the middle of washing clothes, calls out to him not to kick up dirt. Ars answers and then immediately goes back to the game anyway. In the background, Kaku heads out and says he is going to be busy preparing what they discussed. Urza stays by the laundry while Ars keeps playing, fully locked into his hero fantasy. A little later, Ars brings a picture book over. He holds it up and pushes it toward Urza until she reads it with him. Brodes looms close too, like he wants in on story time. The book shows a hero who saves the world, returns to his hometown, and marries his fiancée. Ars gets completely absorbed in the ending. He notices that the hero's name sounds almost the same as Boris's, and Urza confirms that it is an old name with a long lineage. Then Ars suddenly asks whether his mother ever had a wedding. Urza freezes. Her answer comes out awkwardly. She explains that weddings are more the sort of thing nobles do, and besides, things are too busy right now. Ars stares at her for a second, clearly taking that in, then turns to Bors and decides to go. Bors gets up with him at once. Urza calls after them not to leave her sight. She thinks back to Kaku's plan for becoming a noble. Kaku then explained more of that plan to Urza. He said that it is something that will likely take years, and that he will probably have to spend more time away from home because of it. Pak in the present, she visibly flusters. Her face heats up. She blurts out that it is nothing, then literally slaps her own cheeks and tells herself to pull it together. After that, the scene follows her through the rest of the day. She keeps doing chores, watching Ars and Bors play, glancing out the window, and smiling faintly at the sight of them wandering around the yard among the animals. As evening starts to fall, she finally calls Ars back in because it is getting dark. Ars is standing in the yard with his back turned, facing something ahead of him. When Urza comes closer and asks what is wrong, he turns around crying hard, tears streaming down his face. He points ahead at a clumsy structure made out of branches and stones while Bors sits nearby. Urza asks whether Bors did something to him. Bors jerks in panic at being blamed. Kaku arrives right then and asks what happened. Ars cries even harder and points again. Kaku looks at the broken arrangement closely. He notices the bent branches and the rough layout and understands it immediately. Ars says that he was trying to make a wedding ceremony for his mother, but it did not work. Urza covers her mouth with both hands, overwhelmed on the spot. Ars keeps trying to explain through tears. She looks at Kaku and can already tell that something is going on in his devious mind, so she tells him that she knows they do not really have time for something like this. Kaku watches all of this, covers his mouth with one hand, and then cuts in. He says nobody ever said they were not going to have a wedding. Urza blanks out for a second. A goat bleats nearby. Then Kaku starts identifying the parts of Arza's failed setup one by one. A flower heart, a wooden arch, and stone seats for the guests. Ars and Bors immediately perk up when Kaku praises them both and tells Ars he did well. Then Kaku grins and announces that now the father is going to put in extra effort too. He starts working at once. Magic moves through the yard. The rough structure grows and reshapes. The arch becomes larger and cleaner. The seating rises up in ordered rows. Floral decorations spread. The whole space transforms into a proper outdoor ceremony venue. By the time he is done, there is a full aisle leading to a heart-shaped floral centerpiece framed by an arch and set before arranged guest seating. Kaku stands off to the side and presents it to Ars with obvious satisfaction. Ars lights up and immediately tells Arza how amazing it looks. Arza, still flustered, asks if Kaku is fine after using so much magic. He says that using flashy magic like that is not really ideal, but then softens and admits that just for tonight it is fine. The Kaku reaches toward Urza to lead her in, and then suddenly stops mid-motion because he remembers something important. Urza startles, not understanding why he pulled back. Kaku lifts a finger, embarrassed at almost missing it. In the next instant, magic bursts around Urza in a swirl of light, and her clothes change into a full wedding dress with veil and layered skirt. It is not subtle at all. Kaku then admits that Ars beat him to making the ceremony happen first, but he has actually been preparing for this wedding in secret ever since the day he proposed. He asks what she thinks. Urza, now in the dress, stares at him wide-eyed, then answers with tears in her eyes that she is blissfully happy. Ars and Bors watch from nearby, both clearly thrilled that the plan finally worked. At that, the ceremony itself begins. Arza holds a bouquet in both hands. Ars peeks around a post with Bors beside him, both of them acting like tiny hidden attendants. Kaku, now properly dressed, stands waiting for her along the aisle. Then Kaku throws a glowing light upward into a color spread of fireworks exploding across the night sky above them. Ars beams from below. Arza looks up smiling. The whole forest ceremony suddenly feels real. Under the fireworks, Kaku turns back to Urza and formally renews his promise to look forward to the future they will build together. Urza is still blushing hard. She hesitates over how to address him, tries one form, falters, then finally says his name softly while holding the bouquet close to her chest. Kaku moves nearer and places a hand against her cheek. Their faces come close together until there is barely any space left between them. Beneath a draped piece of cloth nearby, Ars and Bors hide and watch the whole thing like nosy little gremlins, completely invested. Bekend beeld de mods and private as it looks. In the dark beyond the ceremony, a horned figure with sharp eyes is crouched in the shadows, watching the fireworks and the wedding from a distance. The figure narrows its gaze and quietly indicates that it has found what it was searching for. On a river at night, the elven force is already in motion. Archers are told to ready their bows and loose arrows the moment the enemy comes into range. Another order goes out to wipe out the enemy at all costs because the honor of the Elvrant Magic Knights is on the line. Then one of the soldiers spots movement across the river. A beat later, fire comes screaming in over the water. Inside the ship, the first reaction is chaos. Flaming arrows slam into the deck, soldiers shout for water and shields while the flames catch. Even in the middle of that, one officer forces the others to stay calm. He points out that they still have enough water and tells them not to waste it too early, because the enemy is trying to drain their resources. Another officer notes that the enemy can rain flaming arrows in from the forest thanks to the wind, while their own arrows cannot reach the shore properly because of the headwind. A report comes in with a map. The plan is to break into the enemy's flank and create an opening while the enemy is focused on the main unit, then land another force farther upstream to seize the advantage. That plan immediately collapses. A messenger rushes in and reports that the other landing force has already been wiped out. The officers stop cold. One of them turns in shock. According to the survivors, hidden demon beasts hit the landing party the moment they touched shore. The report names multiple beasts across different threat levels, including a 5-class demon ape and other creatures ranging from C-class up to A-class. The commander asks whether the enemy leader had originally been marked as only an A-class threat. The answer comes back yes. He then immediately orders the classification raised to S-class. As an organization, this enemy is now considered a special S-class threat, something on the level of a single dragon and fully capable of devastating a kingdom. With that, the commander gives the order to retreat and report the situation directly to the king. The scene then cuts to the victors. In a crowded hall, a huge lion-like beastman lounges on a throne with women draped over him, while his subordinates laugh and cheer around him. They mock the famous elven magic knights for fleeing without accomplishing anything. A masked subordinate calmly states that the victory belongs to the tamer, and makes sure everyone remembers it. The man on the throne, Vrydra, leader of the dark guild called Lion King's Resurgence. Vrydra grins wide, bares his fangs, and declares that one day he will found his own kingdom and become king. He promises land, women, and glory to his followers once that happens, then roars for them to prove their worth. The crowd erupts and starts chanting his name and the name of his guild back at him. That celebration gets interrupted when one of his men steps forward and reports that the one they had been searching for has finally been found. Vrydra turns toward him at once. Another subordinate calls out to him more casually, and Vrydra visibly bristles before correcting the tone and demanding to be addressed with proper respect. Right after that, though, his mood flips back into smug satisfaction. He says he understands, praises the report, and calls the one who brought the news his foolish brother. From there, we move to a prison cell. A dark-haired girl sits behind bars with her hands bound. Vrydra taunts her, telling her that they seem to have found the friend she tried so hard to help escape. She lowers her eyes. Mind eye. The focus returns to Vrydra. He spreads his arms and declares that if he gets his hands on the thing he is after, his position will become unshakable, and he will move one step closer to kingship. He remembers the egg he worked so hard to obtain, the effort it took to hatch it, and the fact that it escaped him once already. He swears he will not let that happen again. Next, one of his scouts peers through a spyglass from the trees. In the distance, fireworks are visible over the forest. Vrydra orders his men to hurry and bring the target to him. The thing Vrydra wants back is the fire dragon that Ars took in as a friend. About half a year has passed since the wedding in the forest. A covered carriage rolls along the road toward the city, and Kaku explains that he and Urza are heading to see Sebas so they can dissolve the mutual servant contract. He also notes that this city matters to Urza personally, because the main Sebasta branch is here, and this is tied to the place she once came from. The carriage reaches the Lawrence Magic Kingdom. As they look out over the city, flying carpets drift overhead and street magicians perform in public. Kaku stares out over the dense skyline in open excitement, clearly impressed by how huge and lively the place is. Urza, now wearing an elaborate disguise with a veil and formal clothing, lightly reins him in because his excitement is drawing attention. Kaku explains that because she was exiled from the royal family, she is moving through the city under a disguised appearance. Even so, she calmly admits the city is impressive, though Kaku still compares the atmosphere to something straight out of an Arabian Nights kind of scene. As they move through Conduit Plaza, Kaku notices the giant statues. Urza explains them one by one. The one on the left is the magic god Oldemir, the first to grant magic to humans. The one on the right is the dragon god Ragazion, founder of the Dragonkin and the first hero. From there, the discussion turns to religion. Urza explains that Lawrence worships the magic god, the dragon god, and the goddess of creation together, which gives the kingdom a broader and more tolerant religious structure. She contrasts that with the Kalamira church nation, where the worship of the goddess of creation is kept strict and exclusive. Kaku notices that Urza sounds genuinely respectful towards strict church states like Kalamira. Urza confirms that she does respect them, and that the strictness is exactly why. She goes on to explain that Kalamira is led by a pope who alone receives the goddess's divine revelations, and that the country has produced more heroes than any other in history. She adds that believers naturally want to make a pilgrimage there at least once, even if people from other lands might find that intensity unusual. Soon after, Sebas greets them warmly. He praises Urza's disguise and remarks that the preparations are already complete. Sebas immediately asks about Arzar. Sebas explains that Ars stayed home, and half serious and half joking, remarks that it is probably better that Ars does not yet understand the strange technical fact that both of his parents are still contract-bound servants. Urza still looks uneasy about leaving Ars by himself for so long. Kaku then explains the measures he put in place before leaving, a barrier around the house to stop Urza from wandering off, and to keep dangerous things from entering, plus a teleport setup so he can return instantly if needed. Subayas explains that the contract they made is not a simple one-sided arrangement, but a special mutual contract, so breaking it will likely take around 4 or 5 hours. Kaku takes that in, then immediately calls out into the distance as if Urza might somehow hear him, making it obvious that he is already worrying. We cut straight to home. Urza is now 2 years and 4 months old, and he is already mad. He slams against the barrier because he wanted to go out too, but he cannot get through. Bors is outside on what is basically guard duty, and Ars complains that it is unfair that Bors gets to be outside while he is stuck in the house. Bors stares back at him from outside. Ars then decides to turn the whole thing into a game and starts a staring contest. He presses his face, stretches his mouth, and tries increasingly ridiculous expressions to beat Bors. Bors mostly just keeps staring. The contest drags on in complete silence until Ars gives up, visibly disappointed, and declares that Bors is no fun at all. After that, he slumps down and resigns himself to playing with blocks by himself, while Bors also looks strangely depressed outside. Then the tone shifts. Bors notices unfamiliar voices. A group is approaching the base, and one of them points out a devil's walking stick plant, explaining that it grows near creatures with strong magic and makes a useful landmark. Another treats that as one more piece of Victor's field wisdom. Bros immediately recognizes that something is wrong and focuses on the newcomers. One of the men remarks that the area has changed a lot over the past year. At the same time, Urza hears something from inside and looks up. A second later, the intruders make their move. One of them drops onto Bros, grabs hold of him, and says that even if Bros is still just a child, he is still a dragon, so they did not come unprepared. Then he casts mud magic and binds Bors in place. The capture becomes a full struggle. The attackers shout for Bors's legs to be restrained. Bors suddenly breathes fire, and the men recoil because they did not expect a juvenile dragon to already have fire breath. One of them barks out that nobody warned him about that. Another immediately shifts tactics and calls for a different support move. Chains tighten, force is applied, and Bors is dragged hard enough that the street and surrounding structure explode apart around him. The destruction is huge. Dust and debris erupt everywhere. Ars, still inside, stares in shock as the house and the area around Bors is violently torn up in the middle of the seizure. Ars, the dust settles. The attackers finally notice Ars. They are thrown off because they had expected the place to be empty. One of them points out that a child is there. Another orders everyone to focus and restrain the dragon first. Bros throws his weight against the barrier around the house, but the magic wall holds completely and does not even show a scratch. The attackers start trying to make sense of what kind of household this is. One of them guesses that the owners might be wealthy merchants or nobles with bizarre hobbies, because the place is hidden deep in a demon beast forest, protected by a strong barrier, and somehow includes a dragon being kept like a pet. He concludes that they must have hired a powerful magician. Even with that, he warns the others not to get distracted from the mission. He says the pet can be messed with, but hurting the child could bring far worse consequences. Then the group starts moving out with Bors. Ars pounds helplessly against the barrier and keeps calling after him. The moment Bors is dragged farther away, Ars breaks down. He cries, demands to be let out, and keeps insisting that Brailair is being taken away and that he hates it. His panic builds until it turns into outright refusal. Then his eyes flare with light, burning bright with magic. The adults outside hear something odd in the distance and briefly wonder what that sound was, but they dismiss it. Urza remains inside the barrier, breathing hard, eyes blazing, while something clearly shifts. Ars steadies himself and decides he has to go. He tells Bors to wait for him. Then the scene cuts to the hidden ruins of the ancient city, Ifur, inside the forest, where the men have brought Bors. At the ruins, Victor is rewarded and praised for the successful capture. Vridra is pleased and tells him to drink and celebrate as much as he wants. The whole place has the mood of a successful raid. Inside the ruins, the imprisoned dark-haired girl notices Bors has been brought back in wounded condition. She quietly asks for a medicine or treatment to be used on his injuries. She is let near enough to apologize to him, and she does. Then Vridra steps in and mocks her. He calls her a brat with the ancestor's trait and makes it clear that the only reason she is still alive is because he needs her ability to communicate with dragons. He warns her not to get ideas about helping Bors escape again. After he is gone, the girl stays beside Bors and apologizes again, saying the wound is not his fault. Bors gently licks her, and the hostility in the scene eases for a moment. The girl then notices something about the way Bors reacts. She realizes Bors has made a real friend, and when she hears the name he was given, she understands that the name came from that friend's side. That realization hits her hard. She asks whether Bors's friend is coming to rescue him. Then, even while trying to dismiss the idea as reckless, she becomes convinced that he really will come. Borsa's reaction leaves no room for doubt. She watches him and admits that he really does have a wonderful friend. That only makes her more upset, because now she does not want such a good child to get hurt trying to save him. Then the rescue starts. A sudden light blast erupts inside the ruins. Guards turn in confusion. They do not understand how a child got in, or what their guards were even doing. Someone identifies the attack as light magic. Ars appears in the middle of the chaos, roaring Borsa's name at full volume. The sound of his crying shout fills the corridor, while the adults around him freeze in disbelief. Urza keeps running forward and yells for Bors again. The imprisoned girl looks up and finally sees him. Her expression turns from disbelief to shock. At almost the same moment, Vrydra and Victor realize that the child actually followed them all the way there. Vrydra notes that Victor picked up a tail without noticing. Then the order goes out to capture Urza, with one of the men scoffing that he is only a kid. An electric attack is launched straight at him. But instead of stopping him, the attack erupts outward and sends the men around him flying back. Urza stays at the center of the burst, while the attackers are the ones who get blasted away. After that blast, Urza reaches the girl and Bors. The girl stares at him, completely speechless. Vrydra is still laughing in disbelief, and even Victor looks rattled now. Urza, however, is all focus. He declares that he came to pick Bors up. With magic still crackling around him, he tells Bors that they are going home. Urza stares at the object in the box and slowly realizes it is an egg. The answer comes back that it is not just any egg, but a fertile fire dragon egg. She immediately asks where it came from, but the response she gets is basically that nobody cares about its origin. Because she is a dragonkin with the ancestral trait, and because she has been studying magical creatures, the sight of a real dragon egg right in front of her hits her hard. The man tells her that she will become the dragon's parent because of her genes. Right after that, Seti introduces himself to her as a magical creature specialist hired by Vrydra. He tells her he will help. The egg hatches. Urza and Seti examine the shell, note its strange metallic nature and heat properties, and admit there are no proper records for artificially hatching dragons. They also realize they do not even know what to feed a newborn, because almost all the records only cover adult dragons. Then the little hatchling chirps. After a week without bathing, the first thing it communicates is that they smell bad. Urza catches that at once, and Seti confirms that someone with the dragonkin ancestral trait can really communicate with dragons. He praises her sharp eye and her memory on the spot. Later, Seti and Urza sit together, and the mood turns serious. Urza asks him what he really means about their situation. Seti admits straight out that he made a grave mistake. He says he believed the guild was protecting refugees and homeless people, giving them work and shelter, and he also took the chance to continue his dragon research. Then the reality comes out. The guild monopolizes trade routes, uses the profits to gather thugs, builds a private army, takes refugees, forces skilled men into labor and sells women off as servants. Urza then reveals why she trusted Vrydra for so long. Her mother is being held hostage somewhere else, and back when their hometown was attacked by demons, Vrydra saved them from the magic beasts that struck during their escape. Since then, her mother kept telling her to be grateful to him. Sut goes on and explains Vridra's real objective. He says Vrydra wants Urza to use her ancestral dragonkin trait to bind the young fire dragon and turn it into a weapon. In Vridra's hands, the dragon would become an ultimate military asset, something strong enough to stand beside a whole army, because Vrydra wants to conquer a nation. Urza hugs the little dragon and asks whether there is any way to at least let it escape. Seti pauses, looks at her and realizes she is prioritizing the dragon over herself. That answer makes him decide immediately. He says they should help it escape. He also says he will arrange outside help, adding that he heard useful things from Vridra's younger brother and believes that man can be trusted. Then he tells Urza to wait and leave the rest to him. The next scene is ugly. Seton is strapped to a post while carrion birds tear at him. Vrydra lounges nearby and mocks the fact that the scholar let the dragon escape. He says the man is still breathing, but not for long. After that, he decides to assign his younger brother as the new caretaker instead. Then he turns to Urza, grabs her roughly, and makes the situation brutally clear. They are going to retrieve the escaped dragon, no matter what. If she behaves and becomes his loyal weapon, he will reward her. If she resists, her mother is next. That is the moment Urza finally starts breaking. She lowers her head and tells herself she has to give up. Back in the present, a small hand stretches in from outside the bars. Ars is there, filthy, glowing with energy and completely certain of himself. Urza is still crying, still stunned, and can barely process what she is seeing. Ars, meanwhile, looks like he has arrived for the most obvious reason in the world. Back in the ruins, Vrydra watches Ars rampaging through the place and instantly shifts from irritation to interest. He says Urza would sell for a high price, and if properly raised, he would make an even better weapon. Since Urza is already using multiple kinds of magic at his age, Vrydra sees rare value in him and orders everyone to capture him alive. The gang spreads out around Urza and starts coordinating. They decide to target his tendons, corner him with defensive magic, and keep pressure on him with multiple elements. Attacks start flying from all directions. Urza gets buried under the barrage for a moment, but when the dust settles, the adults realize the trap is already failing. Urza is moving too fast. Urza leans all the way into it. He dashes through the ruin like he is acting out one of his usual games with boars. Only now the enemies are real. He practically treats himself like the hero of his own story, and suddenly launches what he frames as his strongest move. A huge lightning blast slams down into the floor like a thunder cannon, and blows the area apart. The explosion rips open the stone beneath him and sends everyone reeling. Friedra stays amused, but he also realizes the random fighters around him are not enough anymore. He calls Victor in to deal with it. Victor walks out calmly through the wreckage and approaches Urza in the open. He introduces himself as a former magic knight of Lawrence and asks Urza for his name. Urza gives it. Victor praises the name, and in the same breath says he would rather not fight a child, if surrender is still possible. Urza refuses immediately. Victor accepts that without changing expression. Then he reveals that Urza is already trapped. Urza looks down and realizes his legs are caught in mud. Victor explains exactly what he intends to do next. He means to cripple Urza's movement and seal him in place. Urza struggles, keeps calling out to boars, and tries to wrench himself free, but the mud holds. Bori. Victor attacks right after that. A blast detonates across the floor, and then he drives another mud flow spell at Urza, the same type of attack used back at the house. Victor recognizes that Urza has seen it before, but he still swallows him in it. Urza sinks down into the mud and starts choking as it rises around him. Urza sees exactly what is happening from the cell. Sabos' earlier lesson flashes back through her head, and she finally yells the answer. She tells Urza to use water. Urza catches on instantly. He floods the mud, thins it out, and bursts free while Victor clicks his tongue in annoyance. Urza turns toward the cell and gives Urza a grateful look. Victor does not slow down. He rushes Urza with quick footwork, and Urza mirrors him, darting around in tiny bursts to avoid being lined up. Victor suddenly whips in close, catches Urza's motion, and hurls him off balance. Then he raises stone pillars from the floor and follows with a barrage of rock bullets. Urza gets knocked higher and higher while Victor keeps layering attacks into the airspace around him. For a moment it looks like Urza is about to get boxed in completely. Then he powers through it. He uses wind magic to break straight through the barrage itself, forcing his way out instead of dodging around it. The adults watching are left stunned that a child would charge headfirst through a barrage like that. Urza stares too, shocked by how far Urza is willing to go. Even with that, Urza still being worn down. The demon ape closes in. More enemies stay ready around the edges. Friedra watches the whole thing and remarks that Urza showed a fun little spark, but says he is bored now. His men are still excited, but Urza is no longer frozen the way she was before. She is staring at Urza and starting to understand exactly what this means. He never should have had to come here for her in the first place, and if this continues, he is going to die for someone else's burden. That thought pulls her back to Sete. She remembers him telling her to keep holding on to her dream no matter what happens. He explains that dreams give hope even when everything looks dark, and that when even a small chance appears to change a cruel reality, courage is what lets someone seize it. In the present, Urza thinks through how completely she had given up. She had started believing there was no hope, and that Sete's words were empty. Then Urza appeared. For a moment she thought that was the hope Sete meant, but the thought does not stop there. She realizes that leaving everything to Urza alone would be unfair to him. She starts praying, asking for strength just this once. She decides she will not keep abandoning her own part in this anymore. That decision becomes action immediately. Urza calls out for Urza again and again, her voice shaking but firm now. We are taken back to Set telling Friedra how one day his reign of evil will end. He ties the start of a downfall to a tiny spark of courage. Urza's eyes flare. He throws himself back into the fight and slams straight into the demon ape, hard enough to break its fangs. That shocks everyone around him. Even the masked men freeze. Friedra sees the shift for what it is, and drops the earlier order on the spot. He tells the gang to forget taking Urza alive and kill him. Urza still does not back down. He says he came here to save his friend. He frames it in the simple terms he understands best. In his picture books, the real hero is someone strong and kind, so that is the kind of hero he is trying to be. Because of that, he says he will never give up. Then he launches himself forward again, filthy, bleeding, exhausted, and still moving. The finishing blow never reaches him. A strike tears across the ruin from the side and blasts the enemies away. Urza looks up. Friedra turns. Urza stops. Before the rescue pair fully step into view, the atmosphere shifts completely. Then Kaku is there with his badass wife, half relieved and half ready to scold, making it clear Urza's getting a lecture later. He rests a hand on Urza's head and tells him he did well and fought hard for his friend. Kaku then faces the gang and tells Urza to leave the rest to them. A few hours earlier, Kaku and Urza return to the base and find the barrier torn open. The hole is clean and obvious, punched straight through the hex-patterned wall. Kaku immediately focuses on the magic left behind, and realizes the power came from inside the barrier, which means Urza was the only one there when it happened. Urza is shocked that someone could break through Kaku's barrier at all. Then Kaku looks deeper into the residue and gets hit with a worse realization. The amount of magic spreading out from the site is so huge that he starts wondering whether it is really all Urza's. He and Urza kneel in the wreckage and inspect everything carefully. Kaku counts 26 humanoid footprints. He also finds the track of a large demon beast, traces of a magical battle, and one of Borz's scales. Urza checks her own magic and notices it is being slightly neutralized by the residue in the area. Putting all of that together, they conclude that someone took Borz away. Ars chased after them, and the two sets of tracks split because Borz was carried off while Ars followed on foot. Then they decide they have to move before the trail fades. At the ruins, Vridra is in the middle of a full speech. He proclaims himself Lion King Vridra, a descendant of the beast folk king of this once prosperous land. He says he is the one who will restore a truly equal and free country for his people. He frames his movement as revenge against those who stole their nation, branded them barbarians, and cast them out. Then he explains what the dragon means to him. He says they hatched it from an egg with their own hands, and that the dragon will be used as a weapon to build the foundation of that future country. Right in the middle of that declaration, Urza cuts him off sharply and refuses to let him talk about taking Borz back like he owns him. Kaku, calm by comparison, glances at Vridra and remarks that the man looks pretty strong. Urza tells Kaku to leave the leader to her and focus on everyone else instead. Kaku hesitates because if he fights seriously, he will not be able to protect Ars at the same time. Urza immediately understands the problem. Because there is one powerful leader and a large group of subordinates, she concludes that separating roles is the only workable option. Then she looks Kaku straight in the eye and asks him to let her take this fight. He gives in. Vridra accepts Urza's challenge with open contempt. He says he will fight her himself and mocks the idea that she can even reach him. Urza steps forward with her face tight and focused. Vridra keeps laughing and talking, but Urza does not waste another second. She lunges first. The first exchange is brutal and fast. Urza triggers aura armor and comes in hard. Vridra answers with raw physical power. Urza's slash comes across with wind force, and another follow-up strike cuts in from a leaping angle. The attacks rake across Vridra and blast chunks of the ruin apart behind him. Vridra grins through it and instead of retreating starts talking again. He recognizes that Urza is a dark elf, something rare by itself. Then he goes even further and identifies her as belonging to a notorious dark elf line he calls cursed and infamous. Urza does not flinch at the label. She keeps pressing him. Vridra starts spitting out open hatred as he fights. He calls elves traitors and vile, and he keeps trying to drag the clash into his old resentment. Urza cuts right through that. She tells him in effect that for a filthy beast he talks too much, and then adds that the smell from his mouth is unbearable enough that he should keep it shut. That gets under his skin immediately. She springs above him, hurls a spread of blade-like attacks downward, and Vridra snaps back by launching Lion King's fangs straight at her. The impact rips through the space between them. Urza shifts tactics mid-fight. She realizes that her normal slashes are too light and too precise to finish a monster with that much mass in one go. So she decides she needs something wider and says she will take away his vision first. She casts Dusk. But Vridra follows with Rafaya, a spell reflection technique. The reflected force and the darkness crash together around Urza, sending huge bursts of rubble and shock through the ruins. The floor and walls erupt. Vridra gets dragged into the effect he just charged into, and Urza uses that moment to reposition. When the smoke clears a little, she is standing there calm and dirty, and Vridra realizes she deliberately drew him into that layered exchange instead of just trading blows head-on. Urza notes that it looks like he is smart after all, but also says she herself needs to sharpen her dulled senses too. Around them, everyone watching is rattled. Ars and Yura stare from the cell area, and Vridra's side starts openly admitting that she is too strong. While Urza locks Vridra down, Kaku turns toward the rest of the organization. First he questions the younger brother in the turban, pressing him for the structure, numbers, and positions of the group. Then he calls out the tamer directly. In response, the tamer brings out multiple demon beasts at once. Massive creatures crowd around him from every side. Kaku reads the situation immediately, and identifies the trick for what it is: simultaneous summoning combined with demon beast manipulation. The enemy side boasts that these monsters are their ultimate weapon, the very force that even pushed back the elven army. Kaku steps toward them without changing expression. The monsters rush him all at once. From above, from the sides, and from the front, they drive in with claws, jaws, and bodies like a collapsing wall. Kaku stays planted in the center. Kaku takes them down in one move. He starts smiling and telling him to give up already. Vridra's side suddenly goes from confident to terrified, and starts screaming that Kaku is a monster. Kaku, still standing there with no visible strain, internally comments on how rude it is that they ran just because they saw his face. Kaku, with the beasts fleeing, the tamer starts thinking ahead. He notes that a large force is waiting outside the castle, surrounding it, and that it would be a disaster if word got out that 2 people destroyed the entire headquarters. Kaku also thinks ahead, but in a different direction. He admits to himself that if too many people learn about his power, things could spiral in a way he does not want. He could erase the memories of the captives inside, but he does not want to turn to that if he can avoid it. Instead, he looks toward Bors and notices that the dragon is unharmed. A caged man desperately offers to surrender if only Kaku will spare the children. Kaku ignores the plea and tells Bors he has another job. He says he wants someone else to handle the outside, and orders Bors to go out there and rampage for a bit. Right after that, Urza steps in properly. She introduces herself to Kaku. She says her name is Urza, that she carries the blessing that lets her speak with dragons, and that she was entrusted with taking care of the dragon. Bors immediately clings to her. Ars jumps in too, wildly excited, and insists that Urza saved him earlier by giving him the advice that let him survive. Urza gets flustered by the gratitude, but Ars keeps praising her and saying he wants to repay her someday. Kaku listens, then turns practical again. He says he cannot just let Bors go berserk on his own. Urza then reveals the real problem. There are many servants and craftsmen in the ruin, and they are being forced to work. She says she does not want to leave things to other people anymore. Kaku studies her for a moment, then agrees. He tells her to go with Bors and give him commands. He says he will leave that part to her. Ars instantly cheers at that decision. Urza, who had been wavering, finally smiles and says yes. Ald. Back on Urza's side, the duel becomes even more physical. Vridra and Urza collide in midair. Urza answers with Dusk, and Vridra with Rafea again, and both of them crash apart. Urza runs the battle upward and sideways, across broken masonry and along vertical surfaces, forcing him to chase her through blind angles. The ruins keep caving in under them. In one huge burst, the ground opens into a fresh crater. Vridra looks up and down, trying to read where she went. He asks himself whether he got her, but he cannot confirm it. That uncertainty starts eating at him. Vridra then decides to stop playing carefully. He admits to himself that Urza is good at blending into darkness, and that he cannot pinpoint where she is. But he rejects caution and says it does not matter if he simply blows everything away. He activates Rudzam Strarik and unleashes Tyrant Hurricane. A colossal spiral of wind tears through the ruin. Stone, pillars, and debris all get sucked into the rotating blast. The walls get shredded down into flying rubble. From a distance, the whole ruin starts looking like it is being carved out from the inside by a living storm. When the hurricane settles into a giant spinning basin of broken stone, Vridra laughs. He says everything has been reduced to rubble now, and assumes Urza has finally been torn apart. Then, in a small clean motion, a blade drives into him from behind. The panel isolates the sound and the point of impact. His face shifts from smug satisfaction to confusion in a single beat. Vridra whips around and demands to know how she did it. Urza stands there covered in dust and cuts. Vridra realizes she turned invisible without chanting. He understands that she hid in the dead zone close to him, while completely erasing her presence, staying beneath his notice, and inside the space his own attack made hard to read. He also realizes that the chant she kept up in the dark was mostly bait, meant to keep him convinced she was still farther away and still preparing some large visible strike. By staying in a confined space, she lured him into relying on a large-scale spell. By feeding him obvious killing intent and meaningless chanting from the darkness, she let him believe he had already won. Then, in the exact moment he relaxed inside that certainty, she closed in at high speed and stabbed him. Urza follows the stab with the explanation of what is already in his body. She tells Vridra that the whole decisive exchange was a bluff built around poison. The toxin paralyzes the semicircular canals and heightens the five senses. She spells out what that means for him. Light, sound, and even smell will start feeling like pain. His sense of balance will collapse. The boundary between dream and reality will blur until he can no longer tell what is up or down. Even while explaining that, she says she has no intention of ending him because her husband dislikes unnecessary violence. Then the scene widens out into a flashback. Investigators from the Holy City have already connected the children rescued in Pamela 2 years earlier to this organization. They have identified the group that sold them. The report says Lion King's resurgence pretended to be merchants, built wealth by selling weapons made from Fire Dragon materials, and then expanded into illegal servant trading. When the Fire Dragon incident created an opening, they seized control of Pamela. Urza grabs Vridra by the mane and hauls his head back. She says she has a lot of questions for him. Behind them, the structure is already falling apart under the combined damage. Vridra's men realize they cannot win anymore, especially not with a dragon turning loose outside. Panic breaks across the ruin. Some yell for everyone to run. Others try to push past the captives. Outside, former servants and workers begin turning on the gang. Then the balance flips completely. The funny beard man loudly tells Vridra to take a good look around because they are not his servants anymore. Kaku stands with his arms folded. Urza stands beside him. Ars is near them, and Urza rides on Bors's back. That sight alone crushes what little morale the enemy had left. Men start surrendering on the spot. Urza then explains the scale of the organization. She says they have branches all over the region. Most of the people mixed into those branches are servants, but when the subordinates are included, the total approaches a huge number. Ars blurts out that it is a lot. From nearby, the count of actual combatants and connected laborers in this headquarters is also estimated aloud, making it clear that this place was not some tiny hideout. It was a large operation. Kaku and Urza then start discussing what to do with everyone left. Kaku points out that if word spreads that only 2 people destroyed the headquarters, it could become a problem. Urza notes that there are many wanted criminals here, and that they cannot just leave it unreported. Kaku jokes very darkly that maybe they should simply end all of them since they are trash anyway. Urza immediately reacts to that. The two of them stand side by side in total silence for a beat, thinking it over with matching unreadable faces. The mood in the room gets worse fast. Bound criminals start panicking and begging for mercy. A random man snaps back hard. He says he has not forgiven them for selling his wife and child into forced labor, and that they would all be executed anyway. As the pressure rises and the scene starts tipping toward another ugly turn, Ars suddenly lunges into the middle of it. Ars throws up his voice and tells everyone to stop because the fight is already over. Then he beams, spreads his arms, and suggests that everyone should just make up. The entire room stops. Kaku pulls back, grins with a nasty stretched smile, and says he just got a brilliant idea. Urza notices the expression immediately and goes flat. Kaku and the others move through one of the group's remaining branch sites and sort out what each place was used for. One location is treated as a branch tied to the sea route through Pamela. Another place was used to watch the coast and keep people from escaping, with relatives of workers being used as leverage. Kaku listens, takes it in, and immediately understands how the whole structure functioned. Documents Rexo. A trading company in the city was being used as the public face, while the real operation underneath it handled information, influence, and criminal activity. Urza steps in at that point and says that part falls directly within the kind of work she understands. Kaku raises a hand to get everyone's attention, then states the next step clearly. The guild is finished, its leader has been captured, and the people there will be working under him from now on. Kaku and Urza stand side by side while the bound men in front of them listen. Kaku says their actual jobs are not changing. What changes is who they answer to. Urza follows that by making the threat underneath the order completely obvious. Anyone who follows directions will be handled one way. Anyone who resists will be dealt with accordingly. Right after that, one of the men makes a move, and the response is immediate enough to show that this is not an empty warning. Once the new chain of command is laid down, the conversation turns to why Kaku is doing this at all. He says outright that he is trying to buy a noble title. The idea sounds ridiculous to the people around him at first, but he starts laying out the logic piece by piece. The captured Vridra and the dismantled guild can be offered up as proof of service. The real problem, he explains, would be the story becoming that 2 outsiders crushed the whole organization by themselves. If that part were left exposed, it would create the wrong kind of attention, so he reframes the whole thing. Instead of presenting it as 2 people destroying a criminal force, he can present it as a criminal force being subdued and turned into something useful. Then he points to the crowd already in front of him, and says the most important part out loud: they already have an army. That changes the pace of his plan. What should have taken years can now move much faster, because the manpower, influence, and reach are already there. Kaku. In his view, the story created by crushing a criminal organization brings prestige. The manpower that comes with taking control of it brings usefulness. The value of that combination is what matters. He compares the move to flipping a bad board position into a winning one by reversing most of the pieces. From his perspective, increasing the number of allies is simply more efficient than reducing the number of enemies one by one. Urza hears that and remarks that he is helping criminals and refugees alike, while Kaku answers that he is using what is useful. The focus then shifts to the injured. Ars is sitting beside a large wounded man and pouring healing magic into him with both hands. Adults nearby watch in surprise. They note that Ars's method is rough and lacks finesse, but the result still comes through because the amount of power he is forcing into the healing is enormous. Even the people watching him cannot really deny what they are seeing. He is healing through sheer output. One of the adults then questions Ars more directly and challenges the idea of helping people who had caused harm. Ars answers in the only way he knows how. Since Boris came back safely, he thinks the right thing now is to help take the pain away. Some of the adults around him laugh at how simple that answer is. Urza then tells Ars it is time to rest, but before leaving, Ars looks up at her and asks why people look so different from one another. Ponkers, Urza answers carefully. She says the world and the people in it were made by a merciful creator, and that all of them are treasures. Because treasures can be different from one another, the people in the world can be different too. Ars does not seem fully satisfied by that alone. The two of them then walk through the shelter area for children, and Urza adds another layer to her answer by implying that some things are better learned directly, through meeting others and seeing the world for oneself. Kaku listens to her answer from nearby, and clearly thinks highly of it. A little later, Ars goes off to join some children who are playing. The kids recognize Ars and run away. Elsewhere in the shelter, Yura is standing in front of other children and trying to protect the children connected to Vredra. The others push back hard. They do not want to hear anything in their defense, and their frustration keeps building. The situation turns ugly fast. One of them lashes out physically, and that is the point where Ars charges in. Ars steps between them with magic already crackling around him. He says plainly that he will not forgive people who bully his friends. The spark around him grows dangerous almost instantly. Urza reacts before it can get worse. She grabs him from behind, holds him tight, and apologizes for him while insisting there are no bad people there. Ars is still angry, but the moment is interrupted long enough for the tension to break. And after that, Ars checks on Urza, and Bors rushes over too. Urza apologizes for getting hit by Ars's magic, but she also tells him they have become friends now. Then Ars notices something new. Urza has wings growing from her back. Instead of reacting with fear, he lights up and tells her they are cool. He asks if she can fly with them, whether they will get bigger, and whether he can grow wings too. Urza is left completely stunned by how naturally he accepts what she expected him to fear. But Urza then answers Ars's earlier question in her own way. She says that learning about things she does not understand is fun. She admits that she envies Ars, and when he asks why, she remembers how people treated her. She had been called special, blessed, and connected to the dragon god, but when people actually saw the parts of her body that marked her as different, many of them were frightened by her. Through that memory, the lesson left by Seti comes back too. People fear what they do not understand, and understanding is what makes that fear easier to overcome. Ars listens, thinks, and then gives his own answer. He says people are different so they can learn about each other. Then he says the differences are also there so people can have fun talking to one another. He applies that directly to Urza too, saying the things that make her different are exactly why people can learn more about her and get along with her. Urza breaks down at that point, not from fear this time but from relief. She sees how openly Ars accepts her and thanks him from the heart. Once that settles, Urza speaks about what she wants in the future. She says she wants to become a scholar. Ars answers that he wants to become a hero. When she asks what kind, he makes it clear that he means the kind of hero his father and mother are. Urza tells him that if that is his goal, he will need strength of heart as well as strength itself. Ars immediately says he wants to become much stronger. Then Urza sees her mother. She freezes for one beat, then runs straight toward her and throws herself into her mother's arms. The embrace is held for several moments. Ars watches the reunion happily. Kaku and Urza watch too. After that, Kaku tells Urza that she really is kind. Urza does not seem to accept the compliment so easily, but while looking at Urza and her mother together, she reaches her own quiet conclusion about kindness and what it means to owe something to a precious family. In December of Holy Calendar Year 1015, in the holy city of the Elverant Federal Kingdom, a report reaches the Magic Knight's garrison that a merchant named Kaku is requesting an imperial petition. The report is taken up to Astakino Castle on the ancient Holy Dragon Tree. When Kaku appears, he presents the S-rank bounty Vridra, along with 12 wanted criminals and 35 members of the Dark-Guild Lion King's resurgence, all bound and lined up behind him. Kaku then states his request. As his reward, he humbly asks for the honor of a noble title and a small parcel of land. The second queen reacts with amusement. She remarks on a mere merchant taking down an S-rank bounty, and then boldly asking for a noble title in return. After that, she orders that he be brought in properly. The scene shifts to the prisoners being moved. Vridra complains that the restraints hurt and says he is not going to run. The guards tell each other not to lower their guard and to proceed carefully with the binding magic still active. Vridra clicks his tongue and calls the guard a traitor. Around them, people whisper about Kaku. They say he has been aiding adventurers and travelers, slaying beasts and keeping routes safe. There is even mention that bards have started singing about him. Kaku hears those rumors and thinks about how well the Windsong mercenaries arrangement worked in his favor. Kaku, an official, then leads Kaku onward. He is brought before the second queen, Uruga Jorm Astanoito. She says he has done a great deed. Kaku kneels and introduces himself. The queen tells him not to be so stiff. She says she is only a symbolic figure who maintains the federation, while the real power lies with the provincial lords. Kaku listens, then thinks to himself that the political balance is more complicated than he wanted, though he still sees room for negotiation. He formally presents his petition. The queen says she has heard his request. She says she will recognize his achievements and grant him a noble title together with a reward. Kaku is visibly thrown off by how quickly that comes. The queen teases him for looking dissatisfied and calls him greedy. Kaku immediately insists that this is already more than enough. She then dismisses him, saying the award ceremony will be held in 1 month and that an official governor will watch over the area until then. Kaku catches on the word governor and reacts to that more than anything else. Outside, his merchant buddy suggests maybe asking for a little more, like tax reductions. Before that goes anywhere, the governor appears and introduces herself as the Volkli regional governor, Marisa Balsafar. She says requests of that kind should be directed to her. She also explains the difference between a land-owning noble and a landless noble. The land-owning kind holds territory, budgets, and authority connected to the land. The landless kind has the title, but not that level of control. Kaku immediately realizes what happened. From there, the conversation turns into Kaku realizing he got played. The queen had described herself as a mere figurehead, but the explanation around him makes it clear that she is a high elf daughter of the hero king Astanoito, and a very old figure with a major role in the defeat of the demon lord. Kaku reacts in disbelief when he hears that. He asks whether there was no negotiation. The answer is that there was, but the queen had reasons to refuse handing over true land authority so easily. The abandoned land's ownership, its condition, and the lack of heirs are all brought up as part of that explanation. The queen's final condition is then restated. She tells Kaku to show her his ambition. He has 1 month until the award ceremony. After that, the scene shifts to Kaku and Urza talking. Urza says it may be presumptuous of her, but when Kaku was giving orders to the refugees and the mercenaries, he looked different. To her, it looked as if he had returned somewhere familiar. She says she feels he desires that more strongly than he admits. Then she adds that even so, he also seems lonely now. Kaku listens to all of that in silence. Before that conversation can go further, Subais arrives loudly and brings in someone he wants Kaku to meet. He introduces Liana Sebasta. She says she came because she heard a Sebasta branch had opened in Pamela and wanted to pay her respects. The discussion then shifts into trade, economy, and future plans. One of the people there speaks grandly about the future of commerce and the seas. Kaku reacts without much surprise. Then the same conversation turns back toward the queen and toward Kaku's own ambition. Kaku is then asked whether his real goal is becoming a land-owning noble. He answers that it would be the fastest route. He is told the queen probably saw that too. The conversation keeps drilling into what he really wants. In the middle of that, Silga casually mentions that his 29th child was born recently. Kaku is visibly caught off guard by that sudden detail. Then he is asked a more direct question. What is something irreplaceable? Something he truly believes in? Kaku answers right away. For him it is his family. The answer he gets back is that this is the same for others too, and that he should spend the month thinking about it carefully. After that, the setting shifts to ancient city, Eifer. Ars and Yura are out playing. Kaku watches them while still thinking. The question now becomes what obtaining territory would actually mean for him and his family. Time passes. 3 weeks go by almost immediately. Kaku notices the lost time and reacts to it, while the children keep moving around the ruins without any sense of that deadline hanging over him. Ars and the twins run up to Kaku together and check on him. One twin offers him a special dumpling she made. Kaku tries it, says it tastes good, and thanks her. Then a crash interrupts the moment. Everyone looks over. A beast man is in the middle of an argument, and is shouting that he has had enough. He says he will not accept someone cowardly as the leader of the mercenary band, and that he will prove he is the better choice. But when he is asked how he plans to prove that, he answers immediately, by taking on the trial of the fangs. That gets an instant reaction. Another man explains that it is an old lion tribe tradition. The current chieftain decides the method, and the strongest who clears it becomes the next chieftain. At the same time, there is a warning that the tradition had been banned ages ago, and that even if he did clear it, there is no guarantee he would be accepted afterward. The challenger ignores all of that, brushes them off, and walks away. Kaku watches him leave, while the others react to what they just heard. Snow falls over a small settlement while Kaku and Arnaud walk and talk. Arnaud notes that Kaku seems used to the cold. Kaku says he was born in a country with snowy winters. Arnaud then asks whether Kaku has recovered enough memory to know what kind of person he used to be. Kaku says only a little, and adds that he can at least tell it was a good country. Kaku wonders what Arnaud would do if he discovered he had really been a bad guy or some other kind of criminal. Arnaud replies that put that way he would still go on living anyway. Arnaud then starts speaking about himself. He says he used to be a soldier in the Old Kingdom, killed many people in war, and even stole things from his own side. Arnaud keeps talking as the two of them move through the village. He says that if things had gone differently, people might have called him a hero, but instead he became an outcast. He points around them and says most of the people living in the settlement are the same. They all have pasts, and most of them left their old homes behind. He says they are trying to live honestly now, instead of staying chained to their pasts. Then he points to the village itself and says that when they founded it, they all agreed on one thing. They would make that village their homeland. Kaku stops and looks at him while the snow continues to fall. Later, Virmus asks Kaku why he made him the leader of the mercenaries. Kaku answers directly. He says that when Kaku offered the captured people a way to keep living by working under him, almost everyone eventually registered, but only one person raised a hand without hesitation. Virmus says the others were worried about Vridra and his lieutenants, and about what would happen if they moved first. Kaku listens as Varamis explains that the person who steps up first is always the one who draws resentment and ends up shouldering responsibility. Kaku then says that is exactly why he could trust that role. Varamis then admits the real reason he acted the way he did. He says he was afraid of his brother. He remembers his brother as a child, and then as a boy who eliminated passing elf adventurers. When asked why, his brother's answer was simply that they had been there. Later, while still young, that same brother was imprisoned by their father, the chieftain. Vermis says his brother carried a fierce hatred for elves, and then states that his brother ended all of their family. Vermis continues. He says that one day his brother had a child of his own, and Vermis was entrusted with caring for that child. He says that was when he started to understand his brother's ideals. He explains that his brother had the ambition and the drive to unite his people and wanted a country where the children of their clan could have hope for the future, free from discrimination and persecution. Then Vermis says plainly that his methods were wrong. He says he had to stop him. That leads into the scene with Sete, where Vermis reacts in shock when Sete says he wants to let the fire dragon escape. Vermis tells Sete that he sounds insane and asks whether he is planning to die. Sete has children and should not have to risk his life too, and says he only wants the dragon released. Vermis pushes back and says Sete does not have to be the one to throw his life away. Sete answers that if it is something worth staking a life on, then someone has to do it. He says his homeland was attacked by magic beasts, and many of his friends were killed. He adds that even his daughter died that way. Then he states his ambition, to shine light on what is feared and not understood, and through that bring understanding. Sete calls that idealistic foolishness. Then he says that may be true, but he is not strong enough to fight directly, so he will risk his life on that ideal in the way he can. He says he has already passed on as much knowledge as he could in his short life, and wants to entrust things to the next generation. Looking at Urza, he says the child reminds him of his own daughter. He says that if his life can help that child's future, he will gladly use it. He also says Vermis is a parent too and should understand that point. Back in the present, Vermis thinks about both his brother and Sete. Vermis says he is too dumb to know what is really right, but once he realizes something matters, he feels responsible for doing something about it. He says that is why he raised his hand back then. Then he says he is not cut out to be a captain. Kaku answers that this may be true in one sense, but says a captain should probably be someone like Vermis or someone even better suited for it. Vermis asks about Kaku's earlier question. Kaku says he may have an answer to it, and then thanks him, but a roar interrupts them. One of the beastmen appears and shouts that something is coming and that he will end someone. The others react immediately. One of them realizes the man actually had the balls to do it. This is the trial of the fangs, an ancient tradition of the lion tribe. The current chieftain chooses the test, and the next chieftain is selected through it. The trial in front of them is to steal a cub from a chimera's den and make it out alive. The beastman has the cub in his hands, and the chimera is charging straight after him. Kaku sees the governor's people watching and notes to himself that he cannot afford any flashy moves right now. The chimera closes in. The beastman still has the cub. Vermis moves. In the next sequence, the cub is taken back, and Vermis turns toward the chimera instead of attacking it. He apologizes and tells it the cub will be returned. He tells it to go back home. The chimera takes the cub and the danger passes. Then Vermis turns toward Kaku, lowers himself and says he will take responsibility for his subordinates' actions. He promises he will never let something like this happen again. He also asks Kaku to forgive the man for his sake. Vermis then stands and swears that as chieftain and as captain of the mercenaries he will get them under control. Kaku answers that he will count on him. Vermis says he now understands this is something only he can do. Kaku tells him to watch closely because he is going to show him something. Then Kaku orders him to join him as his assistant for the award ceremony. The scene cuts to the queen, who says there is something only she can do. At the ceremony, Kaku stands alone in the center of the hall while nobles and attendants line both sides. The queen tells him to show her his ambition. Kaku answers that to him, that ideal means having a homeland. He says that when she speaks of ambition, he understands it as the willingness to realize his ideals even at the cost of his life. The queen responds by pointing out that he is speaking boldly for an outsider. Kaku answers immediately. He says that in that country everyone is an outsider, and that the only difference is whether they have a home to return to. He also says that in that sense, the land-owning nobles are the real outsiders. He says Volkli has been nearly uninhabited for hundreds of years, that dragon magic turned the place into land filled with violent magic beasts, and that for nobles who already have established territories, such a remote and underdeveloped place has very little value. He says the relative benefit is still enormous for people who have nothing. The queen cuts him off and says what she asked for was ambition, not merchant logic or profit calculations. Kaku then changes direction and starts speaking about himself. He says he was one of the people in a village where those without homes gathered together. From there, he lays it out clearly. He says they put everything they had into making that place their homeland because they had no home. Then he says it was burned down by raiders and is gone now. He calls that village his ideal. He says that is why he needs his own territory this time. He says he will build one himself. He says he wants to create a new place called home for his son, who has never known one, and for his wife, who is exiled and has nowhere to return to. He says he does not need an ideal world or a perfect nation, only a place to belong. Then he kneels and asks the queen to let them make that place their homeland, so ours can grow up to be the happiest child in the world. The queen listens and then reacts. She says she did not expect him to lean so heavily on emotion, but says she finds it intriguing. She remembers that 1,000 years earlier, when her ancestors gathered the clans and founded the nation, they often spoke in much the same way. Then she gives her answer. She says that from that moment on, he will bear the name of Volkli. Along with his reward and title, she grants him the right to hold land. Kaku bows and thanks her. Afterward, Ars watches the celebration and becomes visibly excited. He says Kaku and the others are incredible, and says everyone looks happy. Urza tells him that the people there are truly grateful to Kaku. Ars answers that he wants to become more helpful too, to his father and to everyone else. On a ship, Sebes is thanked for taking Gaius to Kaku's place. Gaius stands with a big grin and says he is looking forward to seeing what kind of man Kaku is. Arnaud rides on boards high over the sea, yelling in excitement while Urza right behind him tells him not to let go because it is dangerous. Far below that, the scene jumps back a few days earlier to Kaku's estate in Volkli. At the estate, Urza stands with Bors and reflects on how strange things have turned out. She thinks about where she is now, working in a noble household, and about how different her life looks. She recalls that Urza was happy when she said she wanted to become a scholar, and had even started teaching her herself. She also thinks about how Kaku gave both her and her mother work and how kind he has been. Then Ars runs in calling for Urza and asks whether there is anything he can do to help. Urza first says there is probably nothing a child can help with because the adults are always doing difficult things she does not really understand. Ars insists that he wants to be useful too. Urza then starts thinking harder. She says maybe there is at least some simple task that even a child could do. The two of them face each other and decide to sneak a peek. Right after that, we shift to a city where the subjects of the territory live there, and that Ifer is 4 hours away on foot. Urza and Ars head out together. At the same time, Kaku and Urza are inside going through documents. Kaku notes that Sebes's magic key is surprisingly useful. The reports they study say that the Pomola intelligence unit had uncovered the trade routes Vridra and his group were using. Urza adds that there had apparently been a military clash with demons in the kingdom of Ural, and that records show exports going there too. Kaku connects that to something Arnaud had mentioned before. Then he notices another detail. They had even been doing market research and collecting records on rival businesses. Kaku's expression changes the moment he sees that, and he realizes even the Sebasta company had been involved in the records they were tracing. Urza pulls out an older report and says it should line up with data from around 3 years earlier. Kaku reads through it, then suddenly breaks into a sharp grin and says Sebasta's come up with a nasty idea. Urza and Urza both react to that mood instantly. Kaku then reframes the whole thing in a cheerful way and says this is going to be a big shopping trip. Ars immediately lights up at the words shopping trip, and Urza jumps in too, asking to help with it. Back in the present, a voice reports through a communication device that Bors has brought Ars to the destination of his errand. Ars hops down, says he is going after it, and is warned not to follow any strangers and to be careful. He agrees and starts moving through the city. Kaku answers through the communicator and then dramatically announces that the long-awaited observation of his beloved son's first assignment is beginning. No Arlish reaches the gate area of Pomola Port Town. A cloaked adult speaking through a smoky effect from the communication link orders the Ars defense squad to move out. Ars walks up to the gate and says he is there on an errand for Viscount Volkli. An old man at the gate greets him warmly, asks what business brought him there, and then waves him through after hearing the name. Behind the scenes, Kaku thanks the adults carrying things around for making the entrance look like a planned delivery and a regular transaction. Mission 2 begins in the market. Ars is sent out among the stalls and handles it directly. He asks for specific goods, including potatoes, tea leaves, and flour, while the shopkeepers beam at him and call him a sweet child. Some of them praise how responsible he is for being out on an errand alone. Ars ends up carrying multiple bags and baskets at once while people continue fussing over him. Off to the side, Kaku reacts to how smooth the whole thing is going, while Urza comments on how naturally Ars is handling it. Then the next objective appears plainly. Mission 3 is buying a servant from the Sebasta company. The adults review that objective while watching from a distance. Kaku says that if his theory is right, a certain big name matching the clues should be living in Pomola as a servant. He links that possibility to the war between Ural and the demons, the Sebasta company's activity records, and a specific rumor. Urza points out that this means Ars's job is to confirm whether that person really exists and then recruit him if possible. She says that is extremely difficult. Kaku agrees, but he still wants Ars to do it. She says they already discussed this days ago. She explains that Ars is already the child of a noble household, that his power makes simple security less of a problem, and that he should start learning his place in society from a young age. Above all else, Urza says that she wants to respect what Ars genuinely wants to do. Kaku says he feels the same way, though he also warns that this is exactly why the situation is serious. Arnaud walks straight to the Sebasta company's Pomola branch and politely calls out for attention. The staff notice that he is alone. Ars then blurts out that he is there to buy a servant. The people at the entrance freeze. A manager is called and Liana appears. She greets Ars warmly and says he has grown a lot in the last year. Ars asks whether Sebase is there and says he came to buy a strong servant. Liana answers that her husband is currently at the main store in Lawrence. Ars looks confused for a second, then mentions that Sabase had said a strong person named Gaius should be there. Liana reacts to the name immediately and sends someone to bring him. Tonight Coldebris. A huge man then steps into view. He is introduced as the debt servant Gaius, formerly an S-rank adventurer, and he towers over everyone around him. Ars blurts out how huge and buff he is. The adults watching explain that an S-rank adventurer is someone who can handle missions matching that rank with ease. Gaius has the strength to overpower an S-rank threat like Vridra. Kaku then narrows in on one detail and says the key issue is Gaius's eyes. Gaius says demons cursed his eyes and that he cannot see a thing. Arnaud answers that Gaius actually can see. Gaius asks whether Ars is accusing him of lying. Arn says he does not know how to explain it, but insists that Gaius can see anyway. Then Ars abruptly says they should fight and find out. Gaius takes the offer. He catches Ars's strike, blowing his cover of being blind, and says Ars has talent, and asks whether Ars would take the fight outside. Ars agrees at once. Once they are outside, Ars attacks first with lightning. Kakus tells him to show him what he has got. Arnaud fires and the lightning explodes forward. Kakus identifies it as a lightning attack, then meets it barehanded. He calls the technique self-taught and launches his own move, Sky Splitter. Urza stares in shock because he has just cut straight through the lightning. Kaku explains what he is seeing while the fight is still in motion. He says the lightning changed course before it even touched Gaius's hand. He also says he cannot sense any magic power from Gaius at all. Then he explains that lightning naturally moves through areas where the air is thinner. In his words, Gaius is tearing through the air with sheer speed and strength, and guiding the lightning along the path he creates. Gaius calls Ars calm impressive, but says it is not yet sophisticated enough to count as a real magic spell. Immediately after that, Gaius closes the distance. Arnaud is still airborne when Gaius comes straight in, grabs him cleanly and then keeps moving with him in his arms. Arnaud yells in surprise, Urza shouts his name, and Gaius races along the wall or roofline while carrying him. He then slows and apologizes, saying he has not fought like this in a while and had trouble holding back. Arnaud answers that he is fine. His face lights up, and he says that was the best fight ever. Kaku, watching from below, calls it a good display of talent. After the test, Kaku makes the offer more clearly. He says he has been looking for a swordsmanship instructor for the mercenaries, and that even with his blindness, Gaius is a perfect candidate. He also says Gaius is not the type to come cheap and that he would only accept someone he personally considered trustworthy. Then Kaku turns it over to Ars, and tells him to negotiate. Ars steps forward, looks up at Gaius, and asks him to be his friend. Kaku freezes for a second, then laughs hard and says he likes that. He asks Ars's name. Ars answers. Kakus reacts to the name and notes that it is the same as a previous hero's, calling that a good omen. Urza watches the moment and says to herself that they are friends now. Kakus crouches, reaches out and tells Ars they should get along well. Ars takes his hand and the two of them shake on it. In the mountains near Ifur, the scouts report 2 venom wolves ahead. The group studies the wind and the route while moving through the trees. Another man calls attention to a venom wolf carcass nearby. Veramis immediately orders everyone onto guard. The den is judged to be near the center of the mountain, and Ars asks whether the wolves are really that dangerous. Kaku answers that they are. The explanation continues as they move. The venom wolves are described as poisoning the surrounding land and water when they go into heat. Then the situation changes. The carcass is still alive. Poison starts spreading, and a thick mist rolls over the area. People start losing sight of what is around them. One person says it is no good, another says they cannot see, and the wind keeps carrying the poison through the trees. The men ask whether they should retreat. Kaku tells them to wait, and turns to Gaius. He asks whether Gaius can handle it. Gaius answers that he can. He stands in place, draws in a deep breath, and then releases a huge blast that clears the mist around the group. Right after that, he starts calling out the wolves' positions one after another. With the field visible again, the group starts moving according to Gaius's directions. He points out wolves in front of them and tells the others where to drive them. The wolves are pushed back toward their den instead of being allowed to scatter. Line finds the den and reports it. Kaku says that all that is left is for him to finish them, then rushes forward alone and cuts down through the entrance area. After that, Gakus introduces himself properly. He is a former adventurer, and now the swordsmanship instructor of the Volkli Windsong Knights. The next scene begins a sparring match between Gaku and Vermis. Vermis attacks first and the two of them trade blows at close range. Gakus parries, slips around Vermis's swings and keeps control of the exchange. When it ends, he says Vermis is rough and strong but still has plenty of room to grow. Ars watches the whole thing in amazement. Haikyuu then tells Ars to watch carefully before things happen, not after. The scene shifts to an earlier moment. Kaku asks Gaios to describe the 3 people standing in front of him. Gaios starts with Urza, then moves to Urza, then Kaku, describing each of them through what he senses. Urza and Urza both react with embarrassment while Kaku listens. After hearing the descriptions, Kaku says Gaius passes.
Unless a contract is made with blood.
Immediately afterward, Gaius suddenly sees something enormous and monstrous looming behind Kaku. The huge figure fills the space over Kaku's shoulder. Gaius freezes and starts shaking. When Kaku asks what is wrong, Gaius says it is nothing, but he is still visibly disturbed. Later, Gaius stands in the training area while Ars asks him to guide him. Kaku looks toward Kaku with a dark, uneasy expression, then turns back to Ars and accepts. He decides to begin by earning Kaku's trust to reach his final goal. After that, we shift again to the 10th regular report meeting. Kaku sits at the head of a long table and tells everyone to report their progress and any issues. Outside, Gaius is still training pants while everyone else has collapse. Someone even asks for water. Ars begs for another match, but Gaius called it quits. The men lead the entire squad towards a new restaurant. The man greets Garen and his buddies. Gaius introduces himself too, asking for food immediately. Other people leave the restaurant because the knights are there now, and they don't want to be in the presence of wannabe knights who only act high and mighty. Gaius wonders what all of this means. Inside the meeting, complaints start coming in from every side. One department talks about damage to crops. Another argues about defense and response. Others complain about materials, deliveries, tools, and labor. The discussion becomes noisy and tangled as the heads of agriculture, security, handicrafts, construction, and civil affairs all speak in turn. The issue is framed as friction between the former Dark Guild members and the people already living there. Garen explained how this entire settlement even came to be. Back when Vridra was king, Kaku took him down and gave a choice to everyone. Either join his military or face punishment. The knights all chose to join the workforce. People don't trust Vridra's goons still, but they are all clean now, except for an idiot here and there who makes a mess for everyone. Arnauds listens to all of it, then says the problem is that nobody knows they are all trying to be good people. The room goes quiet. Gaius immediately reacts to that, and decides he needs to tell Kaku something. In the meeting, the discussion then turns to the children and to daily life in the settlement. The adults acknowledge that the problems will not be solved overnight. Right at that point, Gaius bursts in carrying Ars and loudly declares his answer. He says they should hold a festival. Everyone around the table stares at him. Soon the festival in full swing. The square is crowded with stalls, games, children, and adults talking and eating together. People move around the food stands while others share what they know. Gaius carries out a huge dish and everyone reacts to the smell and the size of it. Ars is especially excited, staring wide-eyed and shouting about how good everything looks. Brabensor asks Gaius to teach her how to make the dish next time. Around them, people keep eating, drinking, and talking. Some are dancing, some are cooking, and others are simply sitting together. Arnaud keeps calling for Kaku and telling him to come over because the food is so good. Kaku watches the crowd quietly before finally moving toward them. During the festival, Gaius is recognized. Someone identifies him as the Giant Slayer hero and says his name out loud. Questions immediately follow about why someone that famous and that strong quit adventuring and did not keep chasing fortune. Then Urza suddenly asks whether his eyes were cursed by demons. The atmosphere changes at once. Kaku realizes that was not something she was supposed to say there. He tells Gaius they need to talk somewhere private, and says he will handle it. Vimerus answers that he will take care of things there. We go 16 years earlier at Nagara Fortress in the eastern region of the Lurence Magic Kingdom, during the Titan Extermination Campaign. A giant labeled Titan General Gogma stands in the middle of the battlefield while soldiers and fighters swarm him. He keeps roaring and swinging as people around him attack from different sides. Some are shouting for the others not to break formation or fall back. Then the focus shifts to Gaius and the group around him. One man leaves the finishing blow to him, and Gaius answers that he understands. Several people start moving at once around Gogma. Support and enhancement magic are cast. Gaius rushes in through the middle while the others keep the giant busy. A cloaked fighter strikes from above. A large technique is unleashed from the side, and Gogma is driven backward under the combined assault. Walder tells Gaius to go for it. Gaius drives straight through Gogma's body. The giant collapses. Walder and Gaius face each other right after the kill, then clasp hands. Walder says Gaius can finally stand beside him as an equal, and he also says this result will surely push Gaius up to Cess rank. After that, Gaius is shown with a travel pack standing before a grave. The gravestone says Walderbren rests there. Emily stands nearby and asks whether Gaius really has to leave. Gaius says he can barely see anymore. Emily cries and says she will support him and keep looking for a way to break the curse. Gaius tells her many people still need her and says she is already a first-rate adventurer. Emily still reaches toward him, but Gaius says he is no longer the same person. The scene shifts to the present day at Eiferlord's castle in Volkli territory. Gaius sits with Kaku, Urza, and Ars as he explains the background of his curse. Gaius says he left adventuring and his party half a year earlier. He also says he comes from a poor farming family with several younger siblings, and that he became a debt servant under a certain condition. Then he says he came there to meet Kaku. Teziwis, Shibase explains why he brought Gaius to Kaku. He points to the Dark Guild, to Ural, and to demons as the chain connecting the problem. Gaius says that if Kaku really has information, that would be enough for him. Then Kaku realizes how he fell for Shibase's and Gaius's trap. Urza is right beside him, and Kaku says she looked into it for him. After that, Kaku spreads out maps and records and starts tracing routes, ports, escorts, and ship movements. He follows the path of Sebas and a large man and points out inconsistencies in where one shipment should have gone and where it actually went. Gaius watches all of that and calls him impressive. Kaku then says he can use magic to forcibly summon the demon who placed the curse on Gaius. Gaius jerks hard at that. Kaku keeps smiling and says he can already read the state of the curse. He adds that from what he sees, the curse should break when the caster dies. Gaius asks whether Kaku can really tell that much. Kaku answers calmly and the others react around them. Gaius bows to Kaku because this is his life goal. We jump back to Holy Calendar, year 1011 during the Ural campaign. Gaius and Walder are fighting demons in the middle of a huge battle. Support is called in. Someone reports that victory is close. Then the demons start retreating. Orders go out not to let them escape, and Gaius moves. Another voice tells them not to pursue. In the middle of that confusion, Walder is struck, and Gaius turns toward him. Back in the present, Kaku says he will handle the summoning, but he will be the one to kill the demon. He tells Gaius he will not let him fight in his current state, and says Gaius's magic power is nearly depleted. Then Kaku explains the difference between magic power, the body, and the mind. He says the body produces the power, but the mind acts as the fuel source that drives it. Ars and Urza protest because Gaius has already shown overwhelming strength. Kaku answers that those feats were done without magic and without physical enhancement, which makes them even more abnormal, but says that attacks without magic power are not enough to kill a demon. Kaku says Gaius has at most 2 weeks left, and that when his body's resistance drops any further, the curse will kill him. Gaius explodes at that. He says Walder was his mentor, his benefactor, and the one who made him an adventurer, so he has to be the one to avenge him. He says he does not care if he dies. Ars immediately asks Kaku to do something. Kaku finally agrees to act, but says it will be a drastic measure. He asks for Gaius's attribute, then says Gaius will need winter clothes. Gaius and Kaku are suddenly standing in deep winter gear while giant dragons fight overhead. Gaius stares up in shock and asks where they are. Kaku says they are in the mountains on a continent north of Karamia. Gaius looks around at the dragons and the frozen landscape, clearly unable to process what just happened. He was previously doubting Kaku, but now he has complete trust in his master's abilities. Then a dragon comes straight at them. A barrier flashes up in front of Kaku and Gaius and stops the attack. Gaius is still staring when Kaku explains the actual plan. He says Gaius's body is healthy even though the mind is worn down, so instead of fixing the mind directly, he will use overwhelming external magic power to transform Gaius's body into something closer to a dragon's, a higher efficiency body that can convert magic more effectively even while the mind is weakened. Gaius looks stunned. Kaku keeps smiling and reminds him that he already said this would be a drastic measure.
Gaius thinks of his old friend who gifted him the sword as he remembers begging his friend to not die on him. Gaius shakes as he unsheathes his sword, remembering how he hasn't wielded it since his dear friend gave up on life. The Gaius screams at the snow, rolling around like some commoner as Urza scolds him for having the manners of a peasant boy. She too is slapped across the face with a snowball. Gaius watches the interaction, realizing that these two have no sense of caution. Kaku tells Gaius to loosen up because it's everyone's first time seeing snow. But Gaius reveals that he has seen enough snow that he is sick of it now. Kaku shows him a scale from the ice element dragon. There might even be bones and fangs if they look harder. For Gaius's first task, he needs to find 5 barrels worth of materials that belong to the ice dragon. But he is not allowed to take the dragon on yet. These materials will then be used to enhance Gaius's power, and he will be given newer weapons that will be compatible with his new form. Materials that come from supernatural beings are infused with magic that rely on the body, completely ignoring the mind. Kaku warns him that the procedure will be painful, but Gaius is ready to take the pain. Anything for revenge. Kaku gives Gaius 5 days to collect the required materials. He even throws in a starter point for Gaius that he can use as a base, along with a magic bag and a fire starter. He then tells Gaius that if he cannot complete this task, then he should give up his dreams of revenge. Gaius begins his mission as our wholesome family continues their vacation in sub-zero temperatures. Gaius builds a contraption to lower himself down the cliff because that's where the ice dragon fell after losing its fight. Kaku knows what Gaius is aiming at. He hopes to find the body of the fallen dragon down there. Gaius enters the cave as he faces the dragon. The dragon mocks Gaius that he came all this way just to finish off someone who is already on their deathbed. Gaius tries to unsheath his sword but fails miserably. Even the dragon takes note of his shaky hands. It even goes one step ahead to give Gaius a life lesson on how the fear comes from within him. Gaius apologizes to the dragon and decides to make his way back to Kaku and family. The dragon wonders if Gaius is not a warrior and tells him an easier passage to go back up. Gaius drops 2 barrels worth of material in front of Kaku. Ars is impressed by his mentor, but the real challenge begins now. He just got lucky that the dragons fought earlier and he was able to gather the loot. Kaku tells his family to head back and asks what Gaius will do. Gaius plans to stay out, so Kaku leaves the teleportation circle open for him. Gaius makes his way through the snow-covered land, hiding when he finds some beast he cannot take down. While walking, he notices some strange aura coming from underneath the ice. He analyzes the ice and realizes that an entire skeleton is buried underneath the frozen water. Along with that, there is a huge cavity under the frozen water. If he brute forces his way through, then he will fall to his death. The noise will also attract several other dragons, but if he goes too slow, he will need weeks to complete this mission. He remembers Walder's words, telling him that as an adventurer, it is their job to avoid even the smallest of dangers. But Gaius believes that all of this depends on how horrible your luck is. He decides to cast a spell and see where life takes him next. He has no mage or healer to help him, no swordsman to give him advice, no mentor to guide him. Even if he is an S-ranked adventurer, he is alone and powerless. He realizes that he is stuck here if he doesn't do anything right now. Nearby, a crowd of beasts is huddled together in an odd way. Gaius realizes that there is a snowstorm coming. Gaius makes his way back to the dragon, who is surprised that Gaius brought a gift for him. Gaius offers the meat to the dragon, apologizing for intruding once again. He plans to leave as soon as the storm settles. Gaius asks the dragon how it can talk to him because previously he bumped into a younger elemental dragon who couldn't talk to him. The dragon reveals that he is using magic to talk to Gaius, but the younger generation has forgotten this skill. Gaius asks how long the dragon has been alive, but even the dragon doesn't remember. The dragon notices the curse on Gaius's eyes, remembering that though his is incomplete originally, this was meant to eliminate elemental dragons. The dragon asks why Gaius was cursed, but Gaius says that this is a long story. The dragon says that they have plenty of time. Just like that, 4 days pass on and Gaius and the dragon are practically besties now. They share stories from their childhood. Gaius remembers how he was offered food from starving children of his village because no crop was growing. That day, he worked harder so he could find some way to get a job. Eventually, he did find work at an iron ore mine that used crushed ore to strengthen the scales of their wyvern. He even got attacked by a wyvern once, and his savior back then was Walder. That was his first introduction to adventurers, and so he took that path and was finally able to help his family. This is why he needs to take revenge. Gaius gets up to leave, but the dragon stops him. Gaius tells the dragon about the skeleton he discovered under the lake, but the dragon calls him stupid. Gaius needs those materials regardless, so he decides to leave. The old dragon sulks at Gaius' stupid idea of revenge. He knows Gaius is hellbent on finding a way to die. Kaku talks to Urza as he exposes Gaius' plan. He decides to check up on the guy in case he does something stupid since time is almost over. Urza doesn't believe that a man who went through so much would just give up entirely. Kaku tells that a mage companion would tell quickly that Gaius would be taken down by the curse, so instead of freeing himself, he sought to take revenge before the curse took him down. Stupidly, he prioritized his death mission more than his revenge. Gaius reassures the dragon that he is not a suicidal maniac. The dragon asks who he plans on taking revenge from, the demons or himself. We cut to a flashback of Walder asking Emily to take a picture of him through magic. Gaius warns Walder that this is not a tourist site, but Walder tells him to loosen up. Walder gives a whole speech about how they should seek freedom as adventurers. He will one day go to heaven and hell and make all sorts of friends. He tells Gaius to live the only life he is given. Gaius doesn't dream of freedom. All he wants is his brothers to have full bellies when they go to sleep at night. All thanks to Walder, these dreams have already come true, but Walder is dead, and Gaius is the reason Walder lived an incomplete life. Since his death, Gaius hasn't been able to wield the sword. He fears that if he draws the sword, then he will remember how he let Walder die. Gaius remembers how Walder told him that they will meet in afterlife. He doesn't remember much after that because most of it was resentment, but Gaius hates himself for fumbling this badly. He needs to end himself after he ends the demon. If he cannot even get revenge, then he should just die on spot. The dragon looks at Gaius sadly, understanding that the curse has taken some of his sanity away. The curse is only meant to take dragons down, but when it is practiced on a human, it makes them hate everyone. Maybe Gaius is lucky that the only person he hates is himself and he can channel his negative feelings on himself. The dragon looks at Gaius and sees an old friend of his. The human partner was Bren, a half-bred. He was the one who taught the dragon the human language. Gaius wonders if they are thinking of the same Bren, the legendary Bren who made his hometown. During the Great War, Bren rode dragons to face the demons and defeated the demon emperor. The earth shakes as the dragon realizes that his foe is here to finish him off for good. Another dragon tears through the roof of the cave as Gaius contemplates his next move. The walls of the cave start collapsing as the dragon starts chanting spells. A lady with a spear forms from ice and hits the enemy dragon in the face. Gaius asks what the dragon is chanting. The dragon is making an ice warrior fight off the enemy, so Gaius doesn't get dragged in the mess. The warrior won't last long and Gaius needs to make his escape. Gaius accepts his fate and decides to die in a noble way alongside the companion of a famous hero. The dragon looks at Gaius and realizes he won't leave this easily. Long ago, the great hero Urza defeated the demon emperor, and the dragon was a companion. Back then, many people lost their lives and those who lived blamed themselves for the ones who fell. Even Bren felt like it was a sin to be alive, but Urza talked sense into him. He reminded him that those who died instilled their dreams and their strength into those who live. It is up to Bren to carry that legacy or to let it die. Back then, Bren chose to honor who died and built the Dragon Kingdom where he guided his people. Gaius contemplates the meaning of his life as he thinks back to a conversation with Walder. Walder asked him to enjoy his life more, but to Gaius, only a hero could do such a thing. He fights for his family and for his people, which is why he continues to be an adventurer. Walder doesn't appreciate the title of a hero. He may belong to a lineage of powerful people, but he threw all that away just so he could be free. But Gaius is different. He lives for his people, which is why he is capable of being a hero. Walder confesses that he has never seen anyone who fought for their family become this strong. Walder then entrusts Gaius with his legacy and tells him to carry it forward. If he doesn't have a dream, he will fulfill Walder's dream instead. The dragon asks Gaius if he has anyone he would want to pass on his legacy to. Gaius thinks of Ars and their sparring matches. He remembers asking Ars if he wants to be strong, and Ars reveals that he wants to be a hero who can heal people's hearts. He will support all his friends who are having a hard time. Gaius starts tearing up after remembering the wholesome moment with Ars. The dragon informs him that the ice warrior has fallen, and the enemy dragon is coming for them. The enemy dragon tears through the roof as it faces Gaius and the old dragon. He tells Gaius to run away because he knows that he has found someone to pass his legacy on to. Gaius looks at the dragon and sees Walder protecting him once again, but this time he plans to stick around. Gaius pulls out his sword as he remembers Walder telling him how he wants to meet Gaius when he is an old man with a legendary story of his life. Gaius runs at the dragon, but the old dragon notices that there is no magic in his blade. Gaius remembers someone's words guiding him, telling him how he should think of fond memories to drive power to channel magic into his weapons. He remembers sitting around with his siblings who asked why he is not interested in becoming an adventurer. He calls them day laborers because the pay is seriously not worth the danger. His siblings pump him up, telling him how cool he is and how happy he sounds when he talks about Walder. His siblings even assure him that if he is worried about the salary, then he doesn't need to. This is his core memory, his siblings seeing his as a hero all their lives. He needs to let this memory make him feel fuzzy till he can use it as a force to summon magic in his blade. Gaius's body glows as he is finally able to summon magic and halt the enemy dragon's attacks. Together, the dragon and Gaius push the dragon away. Gaius wonders if they took him down, but his happiness is short-lived. They didn't even faze the dragon. Kaku interrupts the bonding moment and takes over the fight. The enemy dragon leaves the place in a hurry as Kaku wonders how the two besties will take this as the old dragon realizes what happened outside the cave. The old dragon's armor starts cracking as he accepts that his time has come. He tells Gaius that he is a warrior, then he challenges Gaius to fight him. Gaius is no longer interested in the fight because he got his magic back. Now he no longer needs the dragon materials. The old dragon insists on fighting because he doesn't want to be eliminated by a random dragon. Instead, he wants to be put at rest fighting a noble warrior. He tells Gaius to fight him. Kaku looks at the cliff as he realizes that time is up. Gaius comes back with the body of the dragon, and Kaku praises him. Before Gaius can make a request, Kaku promises to make the best weapons for him using what he has brought. Back at the mansion, the others greet Gaius and even apologize for freaking out after hearing about his curse. Everyone accepts Gaius for what he is. Curse or not, he is a hero for everyone and they appreciate him. Gaius realizes that he was saved by Walder, and now he saves other people. Walder's legacy lives on inside him. Now he will pass it on to Ars. He promises to pursue the path of the hero once again. Near the royal capital, Kaku ties a bell to a post as he lets his minions out. By now, it has been 4 years since Kaku took down the royal knights who eliminated Ars' biological family. The Euro campaign then started to investigate the cause of the explosion, but instead of finding Kaku, they ended up clashing swords. If he is ever found by either of the two groups, they will have to convince him to join them or take him by force. To prevent this from occurring, he planted mini Kakus all over the place that spy on people, and to determine whether the humans have connected the dots yet. Or after 4 years of this hide-and-seek, he has gotten pretty good at controlling his mini golems. No one knows that he is a demon in hiding, and only his real family is aware of how insanely powerful he is. He already changed everyone's memories, so they no longer leak any information on him outside. All these steps will keep them safe from the human side. The problem is the demons now. The masked demon already saw Kaku's power and he has no way of keeping track of the demons, but that issue got resolved when Gaius joined the gang. Using his power, Kaku can forcibly summon demons and extract their information. This way, he is only cleaning up his own mess. Gaius stares at the tree in shock even though he cannot see the tree. He can feel just how big it has grown. Kaku demonstrates just how strong his son's powers are. Even though he is just 4, his body can handle great amounts of magic. Even then, if he doesn't give off his energy to the tree, he will get a fever. Gaius understands that his job is to teach Ars how to control his magic. Gaius suggests that a mage or even Urza would be better fitted for this role, but Urza denies the responsibility because she is busy with her own things. Thanks to the incident with the ice dragon, Gaius's magic that had run dry in the past is now overflowing. Now Kaku doesn't need to force the magic out of him anymore. The only thing left for Gaius is to eliminate the demon who put the curse on him, and he will be a free man once again. Gaius takes Ars away for his training. From the mansion, Urza sulks about how Ars will have less time to study, but this is important for him. She will miss spending time with him. Kaku agrees with the sentiment, so he asks whether Urza would like to teach him instead. Urza says that Ars is a child of light, and she only knows the arts of darkness. Kaku denies all foolish claims and tells her that the morality depends on how magic is used. Urza asks whether Kaku is good at magic, but he is not. Demons are spiritual life forms with formless souls. Even a demon's body is made from fake elements and magic. He just used a human vessel to fit in nicely with the humans. In simple words, it is similar to teaching a robot how to breathe or have a heartbeat. Kaku stands up to leave. He tells Urza that he is going to the blacksmith. At the blacksmith, the forgers are shocked at the weapon presented to them by Kaku. Zstone, the head of crafting department, asks Kaku how he was able to fuse the two elements together because such a task is impossible. Kaku reveals that he uses magic to perform alchemy. Back when he was in hell, he learned to forge his own weapons to fight the demons he was constantly surrounded by. He used to make all kinds of things to the point where he learned how to make artificial flesh, which is also why he can disguise himself as a human. But in this world, dragons have elements fused into them just like creatures from hell, so Kaku realized his techniques would work well. Kaku tells Daedam that this weapon is just a prototype even though all the materials are top grade. He asks how well of a weapon he has made. Zstone taps on the sword and it shatters within moments. He comments that the materials are the best, but the sword hasn't been forged properly. Kaku tries to argue that this sword is supposed to rebuild itself after breaking because it is made from an elemental dragon. With the right magic, it should be as flexible as the wielder. Zstone argues back that even though Kaku's weapon might be wonderful in its own ways, he made a crap weapon that is not even durable. Kaku realizes that this is an area he can market to the blacksmith, so he offers to make weapons in collaboration with Zstone. The old man is excited that at his age he is getting a chance to experiment with new techniques. Kaku tells him to keep this new technique a secret between them. Kaku asks how long it will take to make a weapon from this technique. Zstone gives him a 1-year time. Back at base, Kaku informs Gaius that his gear will be ready next year, and they will lift his curse then. He apologizes for the long wait, but Gaius has no problem since he has found purpose in his life again. Kaku asks how R's training is going. Gaius informs that it is going smoothly. He has already learned 2 of the 3 types of body enhancements. Soon he will have mastered the 3rd type too, and then learn advanced art strama where he can use all 3 together. Kaku is really proud of his son, so he leaves the 2B. Ars asks Gaius if his dad is gone. Once it is confirmed, Ars reveals that he needs to hide something from them. He wants to plan a surprise for his parents' anniversary, but these two are not sly at all because Kaku has his ears all over the place. Kaku finds himself at the servants' rooms where he asks the ladies what he should gift his wife as a surprise. Ars is already planning something, so he wants to throw in another surprise. The girls give all sorts of suggestions, like meat, clothing, etc. When asked what he gave his wife, the girls are shocked to hear that even their wedding rings are from someone else. Kaku understands that he needs to find a more personalized gift for his wife, so he settles on getting a new ring for her. A ring that this time he will choose himself. He wonders if he crafts a ring himself, would Urza hold it dear? He takes the idea to Zeftim, and the two create a ring together. Days pass with Kaku busy at the blacksmith and Ars in his training. Urza finds herself lonely without her 2 best boys. She complains to the maid that Kaku might be busy, but she wants to spend time with him. Even Ars is busy with Gaius, so she is all lonely. But at the same time, Ars enters the room with an invitation. At the day of the wedding anniversary, Urza walks through the forest with Kaku. She wonders what they are doing in such a shady place. The maid introduces the different types of bugs and trees to Urza. Suddenly, a wild Ars appears in front of them. He starts dancing with the goons as he shows off his skills from the training. He shows off Atrama, Dharma, and Rakama, all while dancing. He then lights the sky with colors as he uses his magic to control the insects. Both of them look at their son proudly. Kaku asks Urza to give her hand. He slips on the new ring as he explains how he made it himself. Ars wishes them both a happy anniversary. Urza starts shedding tears of joy. She promises that next time she will be the one with surprises, and Kaku can't be any less excited. Kaku draws a magic circle on the ground as Ars excitedly asks what he is doing. Kaku explains that they will summon the demon that cursed Gaius. An explosion catches the boys' eyes as they rush to see what has happened. The kitchen is a wreck, and Gaius and Urza both come out of the mountain of cake batter explaining how they were trying to make a cake. Kaku's minions and Gaius complete a new cake as Ars digs in. He compliments the cake. Gaius explains that it may look hideous, but it tastes amazing all thanks to Kaku. Arza reveals that this was a thank you for the anniversary surprise for both her boys. And today, it is Ars's 5th birthday. Ars holds a sword as Kaku tells him not to swing it around carelessly. This is Gaius's gift, but this is not the main attraction. Gaius reveals himself all dripped out in a shiny new armor. Urza comments that maybe this is a bit too flashy, but Gaius needs to look like he is a knight of some nobles. Gaius cannot wait to see the armor with his own eyes. Kaku tells them to head back to the summoning circle. Gaius stands in the circle as Kaku seals his mansion in a special barrier which no one can enter or escape from, and it even gives premium privacy. He even asked his knights to be on standby so Gaius can unleash his full strength. Kaku adds one final condition that Gaius is not allowed to use a specific move. Kaku asks if he is ready to face the demon, and Gaius couldn't be more prepared. Kaku strategically planned this event to take place on Urza's birthday as a surprise for his son. Even if the opponent is a demon, Urza will be looking at a battle of life and death because this chance won't be coming again anytime soon. It has only been 5 years, but Urza is old enough to make his own decisions now. The summoning starts as black clouds start forming. A mantis uncovers from the fog as Gaius greets it. Gaius asks if the mantis remembers him, but the mantis does not, and it is unable to differentiate human faces. It asks why it was brought to the human world. Gaius points at his curse mark, and the demon remembers who this man is exactly. Back then, Gaius escaped death, and Walder made the mantis lose one of its spears. The mantis is happy that even though his curse technique was incomplete, it did end up causing harm to Gaius. Now its dragon eliminating curse will take down humans too. The mantis mocks Walder's death, relishing in the idea of how it wanted to witness his last moments. Tagaku observes the demon and notices that it is nowhere near Gaius's level, but that will all be revealed in battle. He wonders if the demon is pulling its confidence through its backside. Gaius tells the demon to prepare itself to die. He will take it down and free himself. The mantis laughs because what can a half-blind man even do to it? The demon promises to take down Gaius this time and even use him for data. The demon looks around at the 4 people, which according to it is 2 less. The town would have been enough for the greedy bastard. Kaku realizes what is going wrong with this entire thing because the curse shouldn't be enough to take down a whole dragon. He tells Gaius to tap out, but the demon points at Kaku. It calls him a skilled mage to be able to summon a demon, but he is an idiot. He also summoned all the casters of the curse along with the demon. The spell cast on Gaius was not a one-man job, but the job of many high-ranking demons. Kaku calls out to Gaius, who is already locked in for this fight. The mantis starts ordering its men to start casting and take out these idiots already. Gaius uses his magic and so does the demon. In one slash, Gaius is able to put down a huge gap between himself and the beings from hell.